Good, good. How's everybody's Wednesday going? We had a video the other day on the channel. Oh, here's Kitty Cat. Hey, girl, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good. I just saw your email, but suffice to say, yes.
Okay, good. It's like, oh, I usually hear from her by now. I wonder if I should be worried.
No, sorry. I kind of talked to you the other day. I'm glad you liked the video. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. Yes. Yeah.
No?
Same old, same old.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, I loved your video. I thought that was, the couple times I laughed out loud, so that it's always good.
Yes, that's a win for sure.
It was just taking the piss out of her, and it was funny. So I approve. It gets my stamp of approval.
Yay.
Most definitely.
Should just share it maybe to somebody. Who knows? Yeah.
Me?
If you know anybody. Yeah, if you know anybody who needs a laugh. I don't know. I'm always embarrassed to ask that.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, I know. You don't know anyone in your life? I don't know. I figure you must have friends. You're a fun person.
That's funny. No.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I have friends, but I don't know if anyone would be like interested. I could always share just in case, but like it's something that I usually don't talk politics with these people because it hurts my brain too. Right?
Yeah. No, fair enough. I just am always embarrassed to ask that of anybody, but
well, you shouldn't. The problem is, it's like I have no friends. I'm isolated, and I don't go on social media. So, I was super sick this last week, so I do have a little bit of a scratchy voice and a cough.
Oh, okay.
So, just to forewarn you before we start reading, that I might have to be like, oh, excuse me, and have a little bit of a coughing fit, but hopefully we won't get to that point.
Okay, are you sure you want to? I mean, don't strain yourself.
I'm fine to do it. Absolutely fine to do it. I'm just might be hacking every once in a while. I'll try to keep that on the minimal, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh my goodness. I'm still recovering from my vacation.
Right? I was just going to say, how was your little vacay there?
It was beautiful and had a lot of fun, but I wore myself out. And I forgot that I'm like just recovering from being sick. Like really sick, like. Yeah. So now I'm back to being exhausted all the time, and that sucked.
Yeah.
But
it would. Yeah, I'm gonna have my vacation coming up soon too, actually. So.
Ooh, is that what you were talking about when we spoke last time?
Yeah.
Or you're gonna be gone next month?
Yeah, I'm going across the country.
Oh yeah, Nova Scotia, right?
That's right.
Ooh.
Excuse me, hold on. I'm okay.
Okay. Hey, geek girl. For once, I saw the notification in time and actually have my laptop on. Trying to watch and chat on the phone sucks. Yeah. Yeah.
What's new with you, geek girl?
I don't know. She said she wasn't doing great the other day, but she did not elaborate.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, it's rough times for everybody now. I am kind of having schadenfreude. I will not even try to hide the fact, like, I discovered it was impossible to be a single parent almost 20 years ago. Hello. Like, economically, fiscally impossible.
Well, depending. I mean, I'm a single parent.
Okay, well, you live in Canada. How do you? I don't mean to ask you.
It's really bad here. It's really bad here, economically speaking.
Yeah.
Just as bad. It's just pretty much as bad.
Maybe it's the jobs I could get. I don't know, or in my area, because I would have spent my entire paycheck on daycare. And never got to see my kid, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
So we lived with family. We lived with my family, and eventually my boyfriend's family when my son was little.
Well, see, that's the thing is I had my mom to help do the daycare part when out because I didn't trust just sending him to daycare either.
No, I didn't want to do that. My mom put my son in the hospital.
Well, I mean, they're different.
Yeah. So
well, different people, different situation, right? I trust my mom to watch
That's
him.
great.
So yeah. So I had a help that way.
That's how it should
And
be.
what?
That's how it should be.
Yeah. That's why it's important to have like be close in the community with your extended family as well, because it
Yeah.
helps accumulate the resources necessary to exist, especially
Right.
in times like this, right?
Communicate, community, and working together, cooperation is what it's all
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
And I've worked to foster, that a culture of that in my, you know, my family. That
Yeah,
there isn't that at all in the family that I come from. So,
yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I don't have much extended family that I'm in contact with either.
uh,
So I mean, I have my mom, but I'm not really interested in the rest of my family.
yeah, that's rough.
So yeah, um, yeah. So I mean, it's a good thought. It's a good like some discussion point, but like especially
Well,
now, a lot of
I
people aren't close with their families either.
right, and I think a lot of people have difficulty maintaining relationships in general. You
Well,
know,
yeah, but how much is that really a natural process or a process due to the fact that we've been so individualized
right? Atomized from
culture?
one another. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, right.
exactly.
I think it's probably
Mhm.
has more to do with the fact that it's been sort of conditioned by outside forces
Well, it's very
purposefully.
cultural. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we got individual people go home, they watch their individual TVs in their individual apartments, and they don't. Especially now with the computer age, social media, everything's hyper individualized. That you don't. We've almost lost the ability to have community, but at the same time, it's like creating a very sick society in the way that everyone's so there's a supposed loneliness epidemic. There's like people don't know how to connect anymore.
You're right. Right.
But we need it because we're social animals, because that is natural. Naturally, we
Yeah.
do socialize in groups. So that's a conundrum.
Well, I think it's a trend, actually. Honestly, like eventually we're gonna get over the shiny new toy. Does that make any sense?
um,
Eventually, maybe not individually us. Like,
yeah.
hey
But
Jennifer.
then see, but that goes into the question of the future, and I don't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because when you think, well, in the future, that maybe could be if the future looks is
Hey
normal,
Joe.
right? Because then
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm like, yeah, if we see a future like that, like I don't know.
No, I know. I know. I know. It's really scary right now. It is. I don't mean to say that it's not.
Because I would think that would be the least of our problems. What that we got going on would be that in the future,
Uh,
you know.
yeah. I don't know. I think on the personal, individual level, that might be one of the biggest problems. Is the fact that it's all designed to be addictive is really the issue.
Oh yeah, it totally is designed to be addictive. Totally is.
It 100% is, and they've admitted it many times.
And the
There's
fact that it
absolutely no
literally causes brain
regulation
damage,
anywhere.
it
You're
causes
right.
brain damage to growing
Right.
brains.
Yeah.
And
And
so
there's
now we have a
absolutely no
generation that we've never
regulation.
seen before be so addicted and brain damaged by
Mhm. Yeah.
these.
And do you think that
Yeah.
they're just going to let that society is just going to let that go on forever unchecked? Absolutely. I don't believe
Yeah,
that.
but what happens when they're that brain damaged and there's nobody with a fucking proper brain anymore to function to, take it? Like they don't like seriously, it's
Well,
addictive.
okay.
I
That
don't
might be
know.
one of the benefits of this all having happened so fast. Is that no, like there are still older people who can look at the younger generation and go, oh crap.
Yeah, but it's so prevalent. You actually think that's going to change anything? And they're going to get
Well,
aged
it's
out,
one
and
of
then
the
eventually we're
things.
just going to have a bunch of people in
Okay.
generations where they are. There's even my generation, and I'm in my 40s.
Yeah.
They're just as addicted. So we're talking
a lot
boomers.
of them. I again, you just said you don't really use social media. I don't really use social media. I literally use YouTube, and that is it.
I know, but a lot of people in my age bracket do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But not everybody.
And then thinking about the younger than me generation are very much like in your 30s or your 20s, all the way down, very addicted to it. So
I know. I wouldn't want to be. No, we're talking about literally just like the phone, not AI, not even AI. Forget AI.
Yeah.
We haven't even added that into the equation yet.
That's a whole different
Which honestly, I think is also a lot of fear mongering. It's bad, but it's not that bad.
Oh,
it's not world-ending bad. I really don't think it's world-ending bad.
I think it's very, very bad.
But it is. But like by current calculations, the world's ended a half a dozen times over. Like,
huh?
I'm just saying. The AI is one of them.
I think it's bad. AI and automation is extremely horrible, and I think it's extremely damaging, and I think it's a lot.
No, they're all very bad. That's what I'm saying. Okay. And we're in for a rough time, and then it's gonna swing back the other way, and we're gonna have overregulation again. I don't know. It's this thing that happens.
I really doubt it. I really doubt it because simply because that's not what the technocrats want, and that's not what the technocrats are pushing, and they're the ones with power. So if we don't really have a say in it, and if that's what they want, that's
and
what
we
don't
have it like.
That's the way I just see it. So
right, no, the fun part is whether or not we have a violent revolution between now and then is what I'm talking on like a long time scale. I don't even know whether or not
that we're going to have a violent revolution that's going to amount to anything. I think it's just going to create, because they've already created the detention centers. They've already created they've got ICE. They've already got the police state already set up. So there is they have the armory. They have the power. We have nothing. It's a little too late for that. And so they're going to get what they want when they want it. And it's not going to be good. That's, I'm the Debbie Downer though. So I'll just, keep it.
No, and like I also fear all those things. Okay. I just, I see a lot of things. I don't know. I'm not, nobody's fucking psychic, are they? Thank goodness.
I'm just cynical. I'm a Debbie Downer. Negative Nancy.
Yeah, no, I'm like cynical of cynicism. Does that make sense? Like I'm cynical of everything, including cynicism. Like, no, yeah, I don't know. I've met some nihilistic people who, at the end of the day, like I've talked to them for too long, and they just like they don't make any more sense than anyone else.
I'm not nihilistic. I know. I'm realistic more than anything. It's not like I want nihilism. I don't think nothing matters and everything.
Right. No, yeah. I don't mean to accuse you of being.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Like I feel things. I don't like it. I just, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
That's just where I see it going down. It's not like something that like I think it's meaningless or pointless or fruitless or whatever. It's not a nihilism thing. It's just realistic.
Fatalism. It feels fatalistic, I guess, is maybe a better word. I don't know.
Fatalistic, yeah.
I don't mean to criticize you. I don't mean to.
No, I think that the idea is I just think it's not like I want it to be fatalistic. That's where it seems to be heading. And that sucks. And I'll keep on doing what I got to keep doing. But that doesn't mean
you fight that shit. You see it?
False hope.
Yeah.
With what I see and where everything seems to be heading is basically where I'm at. If that makes sense, No,
it does. It does. You see it, so you fight it. That's good. Please do that. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying not to do that at all.
Yeah.
Or to dismiss your perspective.
Which kind of pisses me off. It's the whole act. Yeah. The idea of like, oh, what's the point?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to accuse you of coward. like. Yes. No, I do. I kind of hate nihilism. It is very cowardly, and I didn't mean to accuse you of that. I'm sorry. That was the wrong mistake. Okay.
No, it's good. It's good that I clear exactly all that up. The differences, right? The difference between a nihilistic viewpoint and a negative Nancy viewpoint. That's just cynical of the world because it's what she sees with her eyes.
No, yeah, and I don't discount what you see at all. I just have my own perspective, I guess, and it's just really beautiful. I don't know. There's still so much good in the world. I don't know. I feel like I'm literally playing your devil's advocate here.
You're trying to be the good angel on my shoulder, you.
I'm not. I just
I don't think that
I
there's
don't
not
know.
good things in the world. I just don't think that that really has anything much to do with it. When people have power and who doesn't have power, because that's a materialistic, like,
So yeah.
thing,
I
right?
mean, materially, there are positive, constructive things going on in the world all the time. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
And I personally have had a really good couple of years lately, and I know that definitely shades my perspective. So
yeah.
I have hope, though. So sue me, you know.
Sued. Sorry.
Well, what do you want from me? I don't.
Yeah, sorry about my voice, my cough. Oy.
Oh no. I hope that you don't have a sore throat or something trying to do all this talking.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm made of tough
just
things.
I know that.
I'll
Like,
power through it.
okay. And I guess we can get going whenever you want. I have on my next video we could talk about if you want to discuss.
Ooh,
It is, which I think we're gonna probably land on the same side of this one, which is simulation theory, which is that I hate it.
Ooh, let's talk about that right now because I'm having a literal smoke right now before I
Oh,
start.
right on.
So
Right on. Right on.
Can we talk about that now?
Sure, yeah.
I'm curious.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I hate it. First of all,
Yeah.
it seems really life deny, like self-hating, like it's life denying. It's like, oh no, none of this is real. We don't need to worry about human suffering or
Yeah, the
ecology or
singularity theory too.
anything.
Yeah.
No, there's a whole lot, and that's going to be the point of the video. Is that this is actually a really old idea.
Yeah.
It's like the newest version of Gnosticism, where the whole universe was created by the demiurge, which is an evil god. And I think the whole thing might be like an unconscious expression of living in patriarchy, okay? because yeah, this world was created by an evil god to fool you. They're not wrong about that.
Right? The folly of man, right?
Yeah. So that's where I'm
Believing
going to end.
himself like above and God of all creation when you're just a fucking you're just a less hairy monkey, okay? Like, let's be real.
Yeah. And we've forgotten how to take care of ourselves, which, is why we're in the state that we're in.
Well, yeah, because I think we've touched about this before last time about the parasitic nature of patriarchy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how it
Yeah.
created that's like kind of the first wave of class was actually the sex class.
Yep.
Division.
I've been thinking about that whole female slaves thing actually pretty heavy here and there. Because
sorry, what was that?
That whole idea that the first private property was female slaves, I was like, And I've drifted back to Maria Gimbutas and her old Europe theory, and like with the Kurgans. Did I tell you about this?
No.
Oh my gosh, she's so fantastic. She taught at UCLA for like ever and was an archaeologist who did like more field work than anybody working on this amazing theory of that before, I want to say, was it 7,000 BC? I don't know. BC pisses me off because it skews everything by 2. And it's like,
I know.
Anyway, the Neolithic period, okay?
Yeah.
There was this peaceful matriarchal civilization that lived in Europe that was then invaded and conquered and just completely destroyed by these warlike, horse riding patriarchal dudes. And they literally are the people who, you know how all the languages from like India to Italy to Britain to Germany, like all those languages are related to one another. These motherfuckers are why. They conquered literally half the world like 7,000 years ago.
Well, I mean, that's...
And I think they might have been the ones with the female slaves. You know what I mean? Like,
they could be one of them, but I don't believe they were the only ones, because they were doing the same thing in North America, where different Neolithic, like the start of it, right? It didn't start, I don't think, in just one area.
I'm not going to say it was only like, it was. Yeah. It's also the thing where like people with similar motivations, attain similar means.
Sort of with the whole husbandry, understanding of husbandry and breeding. Let's just say.
Right. So these ideas that can occur, like co-occur. I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm not dismissing that at all. But so this might be actually where, like, literally the Mesopotamians like came from, like, Hammurabi and whatever.
Yeah.
The actual literal foundation of the civilization that we are still living in.
Well, I mean, we don't live in a Mesopotamian civilization.
No. But that's where they always trace it back to. They're like, where did society begin? And that's what you hear about.
Because that's where the written language, like the written word, comes from, right? The first written word in that area.
No, see, that's what I'm saying, is like these people actually had a written language. That's the theory. And there's these little fragments. I need to look into it more, but it's so fascinating.
But that's what I mean. Like we've got a lot of like sort of like archaeological understanding from the fact that that's where the written word was, like sort of that area.
Right. No, they weren't. They destroyed a civilization that was older that had that, is the theory. Okay. It's not Atlantis. They were hunter-gatherers, like.
I never said it Atlantis. I'm just saying that that's where it comes from.
No, I feel like
civilization that they destroyed. We have a lot more information.
No, I know, but I feel like I sound really silly right now, and I'm not explaining it very well.
Oh,
but so I don't know, and I've just been thinking about, how did this all get started, because I want to try and see outside of it, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, as far as simulation theory, I think it's really dumb, because it's like somebody saw The Matrix in college and was like, hey, what if that was true though? Right? They were really, really high at a party one time and they saw The Matrix and they turned to their friend, and they were both physicists or some shit. Because on the one hand, it tries to be scientific, right? They literally keep trying to, and I found back to back. On one hand, it says scientist comes up with reason why simulation theory is true. Scientist comes up with reason why simulation theory cannot be true. It's like, okay.
That's why you don't just read whatever, you don't believe whatever you hear on the internet.
So obviously, but so I'm researching this, and it's just because I don't believe this. I think this is, like I say, some kind of suicidal ideation on the part of like society. Like, no, it's not real. It's not real.
I wonder too how much of this has been pushed purposefully to get, because when it comes to sort of the idea of conspiracy theories, I think a lot of the most ridiculous ones, like simulation theory, for example, I wonder how much of that is just a natural sort of, a natural occurrence, or was it like, has it been pushed?
What gets latched onto by mainstream media?
Yeah, and how much of it's been like purposely pushed out there as a narrative in itself.
You're right. No, and it haunts me how much mainstream media really is curated just by virtue of what they let through and what they don't.
Yeah.
Just that. That's not information control. Not at all.
Just thinking about the information control like right now is
it's terrifying.
Bias, right?
Yeah. But so, and that reminds me, I should maybe do a video also on Atlantis and all of that ancient alien bullshit, because it literally was the Discordians. You guys, that's a troll. You guys have been trolled. Like, anyone who believes any of that has 100% been trolled by Discordians. Bravo.
Right?
Like.
Oh yeah, I remember you talking about this, the Discordians, and how they were the ones that sort of.
Literally and entirely. by publishing first in Playboy magazine as like with a write-in column, you know, one of those things where it was supposed to be a letter from someone, and then later in books.
Yeah. I would like to see a video on that because I don't really know much about that.
Oh, it's so just disgusting. Imagine pranking society like that in the 1970s while everyone was high. Come on.
Well, everyone was busy being high.
Yeah, oh my God.
Sorry.
I don't know. They must have been high too. That's why it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah,
and then by the 80s, all those people had such brain rot. You want to talk about modern brain rot? People in the 80s had some fucking brain rot left over from the 1970s, I swear to God.
Well, there's also all that cocaine.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Lots of bad drugs. And then they went on to make laws about everything. It's like, And a lot of them are still doing it. I could go on, but you know my stance on that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think simulation theory is just an update of a really old idea that recurs when like things get bad and people are just like, it's not real, la 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 la, you know.
Yeah.
This time it's computers.
Well, it is also very distracting, and it like it's like gets people out of the way of actually worrying about things that they should probably be worrying about and doing something about it, right?
Right. You don't have to worry about humanitarianism or ecology or the future at all, or, you know, because none of this is actually real.
Like you try to find the chink in the, you know, this in the simulation. Like there's like I've seen TikToks where
there is a chink in the simulation.
Areas that are like less like able to hold that, you know.
Right. No, and see, again, I think this is a symbolic representation of something that is actually factually true, which is that your world is a simulation in your brain, in your mind. It is.
Well, yeah, it's because we're just seeing it through vision, our senses.
Right, exactly. But and the glitch, the way to get out of that is to just, you know, leave reality. It's called delusional, you know, it's all, you know, people talk themselves into all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah.
Because you can project into your mind almost anything you want.
You're still simulating a physical, real, material reality, though.
No, I know. Objective reality does exist, and I like to refer to it as the water hole from which we all drink, that we all have to return to at some point.
Yeah.
But the fact that it is also an internal projection means that you can fuck with it a lot. Yeah. Your perception of it.
Not on purpose, even with not being on purpose. Like, think about, like, say, schizophrenics. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And sometimes your brain does it without you wanting it to. Yeah.
Or even just like staying up for a long periods of time and hallucinating.
Right. That's one of my favorite. Like, that's what ancient religious people used to do. They're like, what were these mystery cults? I'm like, they were hallucinating, y'all. Yeah, because they used to stay up for days.
They were taking fucking like poisonous plants.
Yeah, and staying up for days and walking miles, you know, fasting and pilgrimaging and whatever.
Walking miles, staying up for days, and eating like poisonous plants. Of course, they're hallucinating shit.
Yeah, right. And telling themselves these really loaded, charged stories the whole time and doing these repetitive prayers and motions and stuff. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, it's kind of disappointing that nobody puts on a show like that anymore.
Well, I mean, I think people do, but
it's called a vision quest. Yeah, true. Not in our society,
even
anyway.
If they don't have a spiritual connection to it, they're still doing it. It's called being homeless on the street and like fucking fentanyling it up.
Yeah.
Some people are still doing it. They're just like, now they're just in despair when they're doing so.
Yeah, that's true. That's sad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is a way to also disengage from reality, is to just wallow in that.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
It's just a different way of getting there. You're just, it's like basically the same thing if you think about it. Oh, it's crazy.
Right. No, and it's like, I don't know. I ran into the concept of manic psychosis a couple of years ago because I both knew somebody and observed somebody, like in a video. I was about to respond to her, and then she came out and was like, hey, I was having a manic episode. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And there's also this
Well,
concept of
I have a
depressive
friend who's
psychosis where,
schizophrenic, right?
oh, okay.
So she goes through manic episodes a lot,
Mm,
especially if she gets used to her medication. She's always having to try to readjust it
mm,
because eventually it stops working.
mm.
So yeah,
It's so
I'm
scary.
yeah.
But so, it's
Well, I
possible to
also
lose touch with reality at the other end too, where everything seems horrible.
yeah. Well, I also think that I shouldn't be talking about this too much because it's about a real person. But like, I also think that I don't want to say like she exacerbates it. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
with the things like yeah, I think she does exacerbate it herself as
Yeah, no,
well.
my dad's diabetic and he likes candy bars. Like I'm familiar with the principle.
Yeah.
Um, and as far as that goes, I don't know. I've heard a couple of people say this. Imagine if you could just feel that good. You know, I
In a
wager that might
manic
be
episode?
tempting. Yeah, like they
Yeah,
feel
but then if you're
invincible
having
and
a manic
whatever.
episode, then you're having a crash afterwards.
No, I know, and like
So
so do they. But I've heard people say that it's tempting to kind of edge it because they feel super confident and whatever. I don't know.
yeah, well, yeah, like in a manic episode, you feel great. You feel like you're hyped. You got all this energy. You got all these like ideas. But it's the thing is, you're you're like giving off a bunch of chemicals in your brain that eventually is going to wear itself
Hmm.
out, and that's the
Hmm.
crash, right?
I'm right, and I'm not suggesting this is a good idea
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah. No, I know what you mean. I know what you
Whoa, doggone it! It's windy today. Hang on,
mean.
I lost my lid.
It is.
Ugh. But it's really scary how sometimes people's brains just don't work right.
Yeah.
Which is why, no matter what I want to say about modern society, there is a kernel of truth to modern medicine for damn sure. Like some people
What do
need
you mean?
medicine, like
Some people need medicine, but
yeah.
I think a lot of mental health ailments
Hmm.
because there's no physical like a lot of it like personality disorders or whatever.
Oh yeah.
A lot of that is just trying to conform behavior and I also into like just learning to live in a sick society. I
Yeah.
think a lot of these are reactions to living in a
Yeah.
sick society. So
I
it's
don't
not like
disagree with that.
yeah, so I think that just giving pills to try to whatever, right?
Hmm. Which I'm
Isn't
not saying that
yeah,
should be
isn't
the
always the
only
answer.
form of
But then there's
treatment.
on the opposite end where you've got people who have, say, schizophrenia, where the literal wiring in the brains are, when it comes to their senses, is distorted and like kind
Right.
of like mixed up. But that's a
Right.
physical ailment right there.
Right.
That is
Right.
the cause. And a lot of mental ailments are like just correlations,
Right. Do
like
you
that
think
are
it's a
just like
coincidence that so many people are anxious and depressed and so many people are sedentary and penned up? I don't.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a reaction. It's a natural. It's actually a very rational reaction to
Right.
a sick society. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I ran into a concept the other day, zoocosis, which is a terrible
What?
word. It's a terrible
Zoocosis.
word. It's where animals in the zoo go a little crazy from being in captivity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then if you apply
Yeah.
that to people,
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah.
I might have to do one on that too. Like there's so many videos I want to do in this new vein. Um, because that's just and I haven't really thought that one through yet because that's kind of a crazy concept, but it
No,
fits, right?
that is just. I'm just thinking about it right now. That's like would
For
be a
some people.
really interesting sort of comparison. Oh, I said I think that you should. I think that's a really interesting and cool comparison.
Shit, I can't hear you.
Hold on, hold on. I think you should. Can you hear me now? Oh, hello? Hold on. How about now? Just give me a sec here. I'm just gonna move some of my shit over. Just give me a sec. Just give me a sec.
Cool beans.
How about now?
Oh yeah, I hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot I have to always move this over, right? Because like my triangular Wi-Fi sucks.
Oh yeah, right. Well, what were you saying?
No, what I was saying was that you should do it an episode or a video on that, because that's a really interesting sort of concept. The comparison of society and the animals being kept in a cage and the psychosis that kind of goes along with that. That'd be a really interesting, I think, video to do.
Yeah. Once I started thinking about it, I feel like I see it kind of everywhere.
Right. There is another book that I have not read yet, but I'm planning to, and maybe I should get on that soon. It's I forget the title of it. It's recommended by what's that lady's name? The Heretic. She
known heretic.
Yeah. It's about mental health and in capitalism, and it goes over sort of the industry of mental ailments and disease in a capitalist society, which is what we live in, right? And sort of like the convergence of like health, money, and conformity kind of a thing, right? And sort of like the foundings of that. And so I think that would be a really interesting one to do as well. Sort of.
Yeah. No, and I understand people would question, especially psychiatry. Like when we say lobotomy, oh my God.
Because it's the one area where there's not a physical ailment that is the causation, right? It's not
they want to
see, like it's not like
they
diabetes.
Want to make it physical so that they can cut it out.
Yeah, there's no it's not a broken arm. It's not like it's something that's it's the mind. So it's very much rests on the case of loose connections, like that possibility. Like it's nothing that's foundational. It's not materialistic, basically.
Right. But it's okay. We've done all of these changes, and this is where I want to say that I do not oppose all of modernity. However, we've made all these changes to the way that we live, and they have these effects on us, but they want to make them a physical effect so that they can just, cure them.
Well, also,
and not question any of the changes that we've made.
Exactly. And they don't want to question that maybe that's an effect due to some sort of societal issue. They just want to make it an individual, non-collective, personal issue that you need to try to conform to. And yeah. And it's not even about modernity. It's more about capitalism, right? Because you've got the influence of money as well.
No, I do. I see it, especially with the reading that we've been doing, as an acceleration of a problem that it's not just happened in the last 200 years. What are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Because everyone was hunky-dory before 1700. Okay.
Right. Exactly. But it's not. So it's not even about modernity, or it's just like an ailment that comes from that, or progress.
Right. No, modernity is like an exacerbation of the problem.
Yeah, it's just more like we live, since we do live in a very specific society now. That's why we are critiquing what's going on now, right? And there's that's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have to criticize what's in front of us,
Yeah. So.
And of course, the thing that haunts all historians is that you can never really know what happened.
Yeah. Well,
the present is all we've got, really. Well, in that way, it's the only thing you can actually act on.
Well, I mean, there's like you said before, archaeology. Like you can examine, say, fecal matter, and so you understand the science of so there is actual material sort of evidence.
Well, that's why Maria Gimbutas was kind of controversial. Was she tried to fill in those human gaps of, okay, this is the evidence we've got. What does that tell us about what actually happened? These people used to burn down their houses and she tried to figure out why, as opposed to,
that's because I think a lot of the times when they're like they've tried to fill in the gaps before, but in a viewpoint of patriarchy.
Right. And she was coming at it with but what if not that?
Yeah. What if there's actually more realistic, less conflated,
Right.
exaggerated, like kind of like reason that
Well, and
you
like
don't
they
have to
found,
like twist yourself into knots to try to like comprehend. Because a lot of the time when you look back at like certain archaeologists, ethnologists or whatever, a lot of the time they're trying to form fit their own sort of biases into the
yeah,
narrative. And
right.
there's like, but that's a very complicated, unrealistic sort of like explanation, really. It's the easier and the more, realistic, the more, less complicated answer is probably the right one.
Well,
It makes
yeah,
more sense.
there's that. And, I mean, everyone has their own bias. And I think Maria Gimbutas's was of being a ridiculously experienced archaeologist who had personally dug up thousands upon thousands of these female figurines. Like, these people were clearly preoccupied with women and like the female form and whatever. So,
well, yeah, because I mean, people popped out of them. Like that's.
I know. It's like a miracle or something.
Right?
And like, I've literally seen these things written off as wank material, and I'm just like, that is so insulting to an entire civilization.
Yeah, talk about that's projection much.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, no, it's because they fucking invented porn. Not because they were really fascinated by the process of fucking like reproduction. No, could it be that? It's porn.
No,
like,
yeah.
Okay.
It couldn't be that they were having a lot of sex back then.
Really complicated, like very narrow sort of like reason and explanation that you're giving when the answer is much more simple.
Well, and it's it's like telling on yourself. That's all that is.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But so anyway, her bias was also that of a woman, obviously, and was able to look at these things and see something besides wank material. So that was how I first encountered her, and how I think maybe other people have. Her work was, of this goddess culture, because there's all these female figurines, right?
Which makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, people coming out of another person that's crazy.
Yeah. Speaking as someone who's experienced it, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. And then all of a sudden there's somebody there. And you're like, what?
All of a sudden their belly gets big and then boop, there's a human.
Yeah, it's a whole separate person.
That's got to be really fascinating. Like when you don't know the process of that.
Right. Even when you do, it still is, in my opinion.
Yeah, even when knowing the scientific processes of it. But imagine not. That's got to be really just fantastic. Right. To someone who doesn't know that.
Like, even as someone who experiences it, you're like, wow, I was one person, and then I'm
like that was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's so that's some another thing that I just keep coming back to lately is this idea of, and like I say, to me, maybe it's my preoccupation and my own bias, but some of the stuff we've been reading seems like relevant to that.
Oh no, totally. Totally is.
And yeah, so I forget exactly where I was going with all of that, but these are just ideas that I'm playing with that I'm probably going to make videos about at some point.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think we already were going through that too last reading, so that makes sense why you.
And this is the other reason why, like, I feel like I picked a good time to step back from politics, honestly, because what a nightmare. Like directly responding to, hello, oh no,
hello,
hello.
It fucked up on me again. Hold on, let me just.
Oh, geez.
Move this over again. Sorry.
Oh, just that I feel like I made the right decision to pivot the channel when I did, not just for me, but also in the wider picture of things.
Yeah. But even this discussion is politically driven. Like, if you think politics outside of just like the fucking, representative politics of like your own country, right? This is all it leads to very socio-political discussions, right?
It's all one big pool, and I've just kind of swum over to a different little.
A lot of people lose it. I think a lot of people lose their ability to have a grip on reality if they only like super hyper focus on just like say
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
or this and like instead of having an understanding of the wider picture of what's going on that could be contributing.
Well, we've done such a great
Right,
job in this country of linking that. I literally heard that, I think this morning or last night, some awful politician talking about this horrible thing and that horrible thing, and trans and trans surgery is surgical, is chemical castration. I'm like, it kind of is though, and I disagree with everything else that person said and stands for.
That's because it's just that's what it is.
And I just have like, no patience for any of them. I'm just like, I disagree with, you know, the trans thing, and I'm pretty well established on that. And I have no patience for dealing with any of those right-wing nut jobs who say that stuff. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I've lost patience with so many fucking people in this different movements, like from all different areas. Like even with the GNC movement, and they're not complete fucking like dumb fuckery of like anything foreign policy wise. Obviously, because they're supporting some pretty fucking like vile shit.
Right.
And
right.
like, think that they know, think that they have an understanding and a grasp on something that when it comes to foreign policy, when you obviously don't. Obviously, you never had an interest in it before. You're just going along with the flow, like you're like, which is dangerous.
Yeah.
Just picking a side. So yes, you're yeah. So I've had enough of a lot of these fucking different groups. I really have.
Right. And you know, I see that almost as a function of just being a little older sometimes, like in a good way. You know, sometimes I'm glad I'm over.
Some of these ladies are older than me.
No, I know, but for me, like I might have had more patience for this 10, 15 years ago, you know, to try and stick it out and like help save the movement. But it's like, you know what? I have better stuff to do. There are better ways I could spend my time.
I'm not, well, it's not even like a movement. Like I've always been very upfront with, I'm not gender critical. I'm a gender abolitionist. There's a difference, right? Yeah. So, because like I think I've said this before too. Like I didn't just was a part of feminism due to the trans issue, and I wasn't just a feminist before that. The reason why I was a feminist was because I was very much was very critical of the government and of imperialism. That's where all my info stems from. I'm a feminist because I understand how imperialism works and what it needs to do to exploit and who it exploits and what classes. That's where that's where I started at.
Right. So, and that's the angle you come at things from. And that's what I think what we were talking about earlier, as opposed to me, where it was a personal issue that then became this huge political thing. And I was like, shit, now I have to speak up on this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. See, yeah, different corners coming from different angles, right? And a lot of these GCs unfortunately think that they have an understanding just because they understand that what men are male. Like that's basic. Like that doesn't make you like like an expert on everything else that you're trying to sort of conform the GC movement into.
Yeah.
But I can complain about that all day, every day. So, did you hear about what happened at FILA event?
No.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's probably why it's on my mind. I guess there was, well, first there was the trans activists who were, because it was a women's event, and there was trans activists who like threw stones at the windows of the event, shattered the windows and all that. But then when they finally had the event and inside, fucking there was a fight that fucking broke out basically because the Zionist GCs didn't like the fact that when there was dancing, there was like some sort of like dancing or whatever, and someone wore the Palestinian flag. And so they got the male security guard to go rough them up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And like the capitulation to the Zionists. This was somewhere in Europe. I forget where exactly, but it's FILA event. FILIA. And it's an organization with a bunch of smaller groups of organizing bodies that sort of come together to put on this event. And the capitulation to the Zionists
Uh-huh.
A lot of their statements afterwards just discuss. I think there was maybe one group that really like stood on the grounds of like the most like for basically the Palestinian women, right? And like not just throwing them to the wolves because like you want to align yourself with white supremacist ethno state of imperialism, right? Because that really also, because Palestinian women are women too, you know. And so if you're okay with bombing them and their children, there's something wrong with you. So if you think that's okay.
No, but like their grip on things apparently is.
Yeah, no, I know. You're against male
Vast.
violence unless it's a woman you don't like. Then you can send like a bunch of male security guards to go like manhandle her. Okay, because she wore a flag with a fucking because they're of a people who are being genocided, and you don't like the acknowledgement of that because you like the genocide.
Okay.
Obviously.
Okay. Well, if you're gonna sick some man on some woman, then obviously you're not a feminist. Like,
yeah,
what
well,
the
this
fuck?
is my thing. It's like, okay, so you're just for white women then. Because
I don't even like that's not feminist in any way. I don't.
No. This is what I mean. I'm like, what the fuck is going on
it's
here?
racist, I guess, but it's not feminist in any way.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Right? Yikes, indeed.
Mm.
I know that.
No, we've had a lot happening here at home with protests and whatever. No King's Day was also my birthday, and I was just like, please don't kill anybody. Please don't kill anybody.
Oh, they were, because it was all put on by the fucking DNC, fucking like Billie Eilish or whatever. Or Billy, yeah. So it was it's a corporate fucking thing with no demands, no policy. It's just a bunch of, it was a protest of nothing, basically. If you're interested about what happened at Philia, also, I think Morbid Symptoms, I don't know if you know her. She just has discussed
Oh, hey, Big Plans. What up? Sorry, she what?
She goes into, she went into the details and we're discussing it. And I think she had like, a co-host on that was there. I only caught the tail end of it though, like of the video. I have to go back to watch it, but it was like a live that she did last night. Because I heard about like something happening at Philia.
You know what? If the DNC organized that, then I'm pleased as punch. That means that they're effective at something.
But effective at what? Having an anti-Trump march? That doesn't really do anything.
You know, no, I understand I can agree with what you're saying. That doesn't really accomplish anything. But you know what? They did a thing, which is more than you could say for them in a long ass time.
They were very much.
So bravo, boys!
I don't know. They were
broke the news cycle.
very much boomery, I guess you could say. There was a lot of older people, and they were only allowed. You were only allowed to have specified chants. You weren't allowed to, like, it was very, very controlled. Let's just say. So, yeah.
Is this the one in DC?
It was all over the country.
Well, I know. But though I know the one in DC, fucking Bernie Sanders spoke at. So, like, you know, the DNC was there, like.
Yeah, right.
Orchestrating that shit, I would believe that entirely. Okay.
Oh yeah. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. I'm gonna go grab a Kleenex. I gotta blow my nose. Me and my
go for it. Yeah, we can take the opportunity to see what our shot is from the other direction. That's kind of, maybe we could, well, the trees are pretty. We don't need to necessarily look at my neighbor's house. That's kind of, that's better. No King's March with no demands is superficial activism. Yeah, no, true. I mean, because we already don't have a king, and people were saying that, but I was just gonna say that I was glad nothing happened, because otherwise my birthday would have been known as No King's Day for the rest of my damn life, and I don't want it. That's just my own this personal superficial wish there.
Hello. I had to blow my nose really bad. I hate being sick.
I'm sorry. No, but I don't know if you're going to think Just what I was going to say about No King's Day is I'm glad that nobody died because it's my birthday and it would have been known as No King's Day for the rest of my life if somebody had been killed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want that. It's my little selfish prayer, you know.
Oh yeah, big plans, little drive. I agree.
Yep, that's what she was saying. Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I'm just saying, I mean, if the Democrats did that, then, you know, good for them. They did a thing. Good job, boys. You broke into the news and everything. Good job.
Right? Okay. Well, that's a problem with the Dems is the fact that everything has to be about identity and culture because they cannot at all acknowledge any economic sort of policy.
The real problem. They literally can't address the real problem.
Exactly. So that they defer to all these like bullshit things that like, and the more economically, worse it gets, the more irrelevant they're going to become, obviously, right?
Well, and then, but see, then the this whole, right wing, Christian nationalism thing does play right into their hands, though. I mean, it makes them look really good. Then they don't have to try very hard, which is why it's disgusting that they're not hardly doing anything at all.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so. It's why it's extra disgusting that they're barely doing anything at all. It's like, you guys can't even see this. You guys can't even seize the moment. Like, what the fuck?
Well, of course, I know. Well, that's because that's what they rely on. Exactly what they rely on. They don't offer anyone anything. They just point to the boogeyman and be like, it'll be worse with them. And then they don't have to actually offer you dick. Like, they don't have to do a damn thing.
Yeah, right? And it's just, it's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah.
Geek Girl says, TTY, I'll talk to you later. I'm taking a friend to the dentist. Oh, that sounds fun. I don't think she knows I'm a TERF because she's been talking about her friend with he, him pronouns and his endometriosis. Oh dear.
My God.
Oh, no. That's sad. That's sad. Like, and I don't know. Again, maybe I'm just getting old, but I just feel less angry and more sad for those people,
Like Delulus?
Yes. Yeah. You're like, how much do you have to hate yourself to convince yourself that you're a man? Oh my God.
Right. It is losing steam though. It's the trend, the trans trends kind of
I saw that.
Of it has been decreasing at a rapid rate.
Right, specifically non-binary.
Eventually it'll be like a fucking bad dream.
Right, except for the people who actually went through with all of that shit.
Yeah, I know, but shit. There's more important things. You did this to yourself.
No, I know, but we as a society are still going to have them around, is what I'm saying.
Well, I know, but the thing is, like, there's just so much more important things to focus on. And I'm sorry that you fucked yourself, kind of a thing. That's the way I see it. Like, there's nothing I can do about it now. You fucked yourself. We tried to warn you.
Yeah, no, I know. They're still not going to get the treatment that they need.
No.
So, we have these Delulu people wandering around who've now been cut off from their, support supply, and they're gonna, I don't know. It just seems like even a worse situation in that way, at least,
Well, I've got so much going on. My sympathies run dry.
No, yeah. It's not that I feel sorry for them. My concern is not, the poor trans people. Like, no. But it's, I don't know. I'm just concerned for like what's going to happen to the people around. I don't know. I know a lot of liberal people, and I know a lot of people who are, who made a lot of life changes based around that over the last decade, and I brace for the impact, essentially.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, before this goes on too long, I want to just go over what we're going to read today. Yay!
Okay, yeah. I'm sure it will be positive and life-affirming as always.
You know me so well.
Spoilers.
So we've got Chapter 4, Housewifeization, International Women, and the new International Division of Labor.
I've been looking forward to this one. Yeah.
We got chapters, or sub-chapters, International Capital, rediscovers third world women. We got why women, then women as breeders and consumers. Linkages, some examples, and some conclusions. So it looks like this one's not going to be too long today.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe they're long chapters. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, I will say that this book was written a while ago, and I think that there's some new developments that maybe we can get into after we read that I might want to talk about.
Okay, yeah.
Just because of how economically structured society is now, and sort of like how we're not consumer based anymore. We're more hedge fund based. Like the money that is driving the economy now isn't really just based on needing all the consumer goods now.
Right. The core of the engine has shifted.
Gotten past that point to now it's eating itself from the inside out. And what's running this show now is like hedge fund money and stuff like that. And yeah,
we're just mainlining it. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we have a discussion about that afterwards, because obviously this is a little bit of an older book, but at least we can like go over like what it was then.
Well, you know, it's always good to understand how we got where we are.
Exactly.
So I'm going to mute myself.
Yep. And I'm going to just pull up this chair and get her to go. All right. So Housewifization International, Women and the New International Division of Labor. International Capital rediscovers third world women. In the preceding chapter, it was shown that the development of the capitalist world economy was based not only on a particular international division of labor, by which colonies were subjected and exploited, but also on a particular manipulation of the sexual division of labor. The logic governing both divisions is the contradictory relationship between the progress of one pole and the retrogression of the other. From the 16th century onwards, the world has been divided into regions and areas in which different intrinsically connected forms of labor or production relations have been introduced for different types of production. The accumulation of capital, however, took place in the core states of Europe and later also in the USA. The concept of the international division of labor has been used to describe the structural division, the vertical relationship existing between the colonial powers and their dependent colonies in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. The old international division of labor began in the colonial period and lasted almost up to the 70s of this century. The old international division of labor meant that raw materials were produced in the colonies or ex-colonies, that they were transported to the industrialized countries in Europe and the USA, and later also Japan, that they were transformed into industrial products, which were then marketed either in the industrialized countries themselves or exported. In the early phases of this international division of labor, these machine-made goods, above all machine-made textiles, were also thrown by force into the markets of the colonies. For most of them, this meant the ruin of their own textile industry, as the machine-made goods were cheaper. The destruction of the Indian textile industry by English factory-made cloth is the best known example of this process. The old international division of labor also meant that labor did not have the same value in the colonies and in the metropoles. In the colonies, labor costs were kept low partly by force, for example, in plantations, by a system of slave labor, by other forms of labor control, for example, indentureship, which prevented the emergence of the free wage laborer, the prototype of the industrial worker in the West. Hence, the old international division of labor meant the import of cheap raw materials from the colonies and ex-colonies, produced by cheap labor, and the production of machine-made goods in the metropoles by expensive labor, which also had the purchasing power to buy these commodities. Hold on. I just got a text from my kid. Give me a sec here.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're just watching the world go by. Look at that breeze and those trees. Isn't that nice? It's a perfectly cloudless sky here in East Tennessee on this beautiful October day. And, yeah. Just hanging out.
Okay, sorry about that. My kid's not
Everything
feeling the best,
okay?
so I'm gonna. Yeah, he's the one that gave me the sickness, so
Oh
he's
no.
not feeling the best himself. So he wants to come home from school at lunch. So I'm gonna go pick him up.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
better get
When do
on
you need
this.
to go? By noon or what?
Yeah, by noon.
Okay, because I
By
gotta get
noon.
off at 3 anyway. Yeah, I gotta get
Okay.
off then
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. All right. So
Sounds good.
let's. Where was I? Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Due to their due to their low wages, the purchasing power of the workers in the colonies remained low. This relationship led, as we know, to ever increasing wealth and growth in the industrialized countries, accompanied by greater wage demands of the workers, who were also participating in the growing wealth based on the exploitation of the colonies and their workers. On the part of these workers, it led to ever growing pauperization and underdevelopment. In the 1970s, however, the managers of the big national and multinational corporations in Europe, the USA, and Japan realized that the boom period, which had followed the end of the World War II, was over, that continuous economic growth, which had been preached to the people in the industrialized countries as a dogma, and had thus become for them something they took for granted, had come to an end. This, they feared, could lead to social upheavals if it became clear that the recession was not only a temporary crisis, but might mean the end of a whole epoch of the capitalist world economy. Therefore, the need to change the system of the world economy or the international division of labor in such a way that continuous growth would return to the capitalist countries became paramount. This new model, worked out by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, the supranational organization of the Western industrial countries, meant labor intensive and hence labor cost intensive production processes should be exported to the colonies, now called developing countries, the third world, etc. That the whole industrial plants should be shifted to these countries, and that third world workers, because of their low wage levels, should now produce the machine made consumer goods for the masses in the Western countries. At the same time, agriculture in the developing countries should be modernized through new technological inputs so that it too could produce products for export to the rich countries. This particular industrialization of third world countries does not mean that third world countries obtained much control over their industries established in the free trade or production zones or world market factories. The factories relocated to the Philippines, Malaysia, South Korea, Singapore, Mexico, Sri Lanka, and Thailand belong largely to multinational corporations of the USA, Germany, and Japan. In particular, such industries were relocated in which the production process was still rather labor intensive and had not yet been rationalized to a high degree. These were particularly the textile and garment industries, the electronics industry, and the toy industry. The relocation of industries from developed to underdeveloped countries does not mean a genuine industrialization of the latter. It means rather the closing down of a particular factory in federal Germany, Holland, or the USA, and its reopening in Southeast Asia, Africa, or Latin America. Thus, quote, trousers for the federal German market are no longer produced in Mönchengladbach, but in the Tunisian subsidiary of the same federal German company. Injection pumps, which were formerly made for the federal German market by a federal German company in Stuttgart, are now manufactured partly to the same end by the same company at a site in India. Television sets are produced on the same basis by another company in Taiwan. Car radio equipment in Malaysia, watches in Hong Kong, electronic components in Singapore and Malaysia all fall into the same category, end quote, by Froebel, circa 1980. The so-called third technological revolution, the computer revolution, based on the development of semiconductors and microprocessors, was made possible by the relocation of mainly American and Japanese firms to Southeast Asia, and by the superexploitation of Asian women, who constituted up to 80% of the workforce in these electronics industries. Some of the consequences of this new international division of labor are the following. One, the rising unemployment of workers in industrialized countries. As many of the relocated factories, like those of the textile and electronics industries, had mainly employed women, this unemployment affects more women than men. Two, Developing countries increasingly become areas of production of consumer goods for the rich countries, whereas rich countries increasingly become areas of consumption only. Production and consumption are now divided by the world market to an unprecedented degree. 3. The export-oriented production in developing countries gears most labor time, raw materials, skills, and technical development towards the demand of the markets in the rich countries, not towards the needs of the people in the underdeveloped countries. 4. As the industrialized countries' markets are increasingly saturated with the necessary consumer goods, third world workers are increasingly forced to produce either luxury items for the rich countries, for example, flowers, handicrafts, luxury food and fruits, entertainment gadgets, etc., or components for military equipment and other high technology like the microprocessors. 5. As these commodities are produced in countries with an extremely low wage level, they can be sold in the rich countries at rather low prices so that they can become mass consumer goods. Items which were formerly absolute luxury items for a small elite, such as orchids, for example, can now be bought the whole year round at a low price by ordinary workers. This means that in spite of rising mass consumption in the rich countries, this means that in spite of rising unemployment and a decrease in real wages, the new International Division of Labor guarantees a level of mass consumption in the rich countries which helps to prevent the outbreak of social unrest. However, this is possible only as long as these countries are able to maintain a certain level of mass purchasing power. So far, the Western capitalist states have been able to maintain this level. So just want to quip in right there. That has changed now, right? They're not producing a mass amounts of goods and saturating it now. That has changed, but we'll get into that later on. So the strategy of the new International Division of Labor can work only if two conditions are fulfilled. 1, the relocated industries, agribusiness, and other export-oriented enterprises must be able to find the cheapest, most docile, and most manipulable workers in the underdeveloped countries in order to lower production costs as far as possible. 2, these corporations must mobilize the consumers in the rich countries to buy all the items produced in the third world countries. In both strategies, and the mobilization of women plays an essential role. Apart from the often analyzed integration of women as housewives into the capitalist accumulation process, the integration of third world women's work into the global market economy takes place in 4 major sectors. 1, in large-scale manufacturing industries, mostly owned by transnational enterprises in free production zones or world market factories. These industries include mainly electronics, textiles, and garments and toys. Apart from these central units, there are often many small-scale ancillary units, either as small workshops or as cottage industries to which certain production processes are subcontracted. In small-scale manufacturing of a variety of consumer goods, ranging from handicrafts, food processing, garment manufacture, to making art objects. This sector, usually referred to as the informal sector, is found both in urban slums as well as in rural areas. The work organization in this sector often follows the putting out system. Sometimes women have formed cooperatives in an attempt to avoid the exploitation of the middlemen, who usually market the products. It is characteristic of this sector that some of the products produced by the women were items traditionally produced for the consumption of the community. That is, they had no exchange value, but only a use value. With the integration of such goods into an external market system, these items become commodities, and the producers become commodity producers, even if they maintain the same form of production, for example, household production. In recent years, a deliberate effort has been made, known as the strategy to increase income-generating activities among poor third world women, to link this area of women's work to the world market. 3. The third area where women's work is integrated into the world market is agriculture. It comprises of A, large-scale cash crop production for export, for example, strawberries, flowers, vegetables. B, women working in plantations such as tea and coffee. C, women working as unpaid family labor in small peasant units which produce independent. E. Oh, hello? Am I still live?
Yeah, sorry, I can still hear you.
Okay.
What
I don't know
happened?
why that went off. I don't know. My light went off for whatever reason. Okay, I'll keep going.
Oh,
E. Women working as casual labor in commercial agriculture, such as rice and sugar. The changes in the sexual division of labor, which are taking place under the impact of this new strategy of integrating all third world countries and areas into a global market system, are such that men may gain access to money, new skills, technology, wage labor, and productive property. Women, on the other hand, are increasingly defined as dependents, that is, housewives, irrespective of the fact that in many cases, as for instance in Africa, they still play the most crucial role in subsistence production. 4. Women's work in a fourth area has gained increasing importance in recent years. Women serving European, American, and Japanese men in tourist and sex industries, mainly in Asia and Africa. Though it would be interesting to make a systematic study of the interplay between the new international division of labor and the manipulation of the sexual division of labor in each of the above or previously mentioned areas and worldwide, I think for the purpose of this study, it will suffice to analyze a few characteristic cases. Thanks to the work done in recent years on the effects of development on third world women, we today possess sufficient empirical evidence to be able to identify the main trends. But before I come to these more concrete examples, it may be useful to ask ourselves why, all of a sudden, women and poor third world women at that have been rediscovered by international capital, for they had already been discovered in the early stages of colonialism, as we have seen. If one were to believe the many official statements on the need to integrate women into development made in the 1970s, particularly following the International Women's Conference in Mexico in 1975, one might think that there was a real change of heart in the centers of capitalist patriarchy. But if we bear in mind the cynicism with which women from the 16th century onwards have been treated, we will have to ask for the deeper reasons for the attention given to women in the colonies today. So now we move on to why women. I propose the following thesis to guide us in our quest to find an answer to the above question, or the previous question. 1. Contrary to what is commonly accepted, women, not men, are the optimal labor force for the capitalist and the socialist accumulation process on a world scale. Though this has always been the case, in this phase of development of the world economy, this fact is openly incorporated into economic strategies of national and international planners. 2. Women are the optimal labor force because they are now being universally defined as housewives, not as workers. This means their work, whether in use value or commodity production, is obscured, does not appear as free wage labor, is defined as an income generating activity, and can hence be bought at a much cheaper price than male labor. 3. Moreover, by defining women universally as housewives, it is possible not only to cheapen their labor, but also to gain political and ideological control over them. Housewives are atomized and isolated. The work organization makes the awareness of common interests of the whole process of production very difficult. Their horizon remains limited by the family. Trade unions have never taken interest in women as housewives. 4. Due to this interest in women, and particularly women in the colonies as the optimal labor force, we do not observe a tendency towards the generalization of the free proletarian as the typical laborer, but of the marginalized, housewifized, unfree laborer, most of them women. 5. This tendency is based on an increasing convergence of the sexual and the international division of labor, a division between men and women, men defined as free wage laborers, women as non-free housewives, and a division between producers, mainly in the colonies and mainly in the countryside, and consumers, mainly in the rich countries or the cities. Within this division, there is also the division between women mainly as producers in the colonies and as consumers mainly in the West. 6. The overabundance of commodities in the Western supermarkets is not the result, as is mostly assumed, of the productivity of work and of the workers in the industrialized countries. This productivity is itself a result of the exploitation and superexploitation of the colonies, particularly of women there. The latter is particularly true if we ask who constitutes the labor force in third world countries today. Though we do not have statistics covering wide areas of women's work, for example, in the informal sector, we still have enough evidence of the fact that today 2/3 of all labor in the world is done by women, which was noted in the UN Conference on Women, Copenhagen, 1980. In the free production zones in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America, more than 70% of the labor force is female. As Froebel and his associates have found out, the majority of the women are young women from aged 14 to 24. They work in the actual production processes on the assembly line, whereas the few men in these industries are mostly supervisors. If we add to this number of young women in the free production zones all those women who work in export-oriented agribusiness, in the informal sector, in home and cottage industries, we note that a very large proportion of female labor in third world countries is engaged in production of goods for the market in the rich countries. We must also include in this figure the hundreds of millions of women who do most of the backbreaking work in agriculture in Africa and Asia, both in subsistence and often also in cash crop production, and of course also in the plantations. But what is it that makes third world women more attractive as workers to international capital than men? Rachel Grossman and others back in 1979 have found out that women in South and Southeast Asia are considered to be the most docile, manipulable labor force who, at the same time, show a very high degree of productivity of work. Most governments who want to attract foreign investors advertise their attractive low-paid women with their nimble fingers. Here is a government of Malaysia advertisement. Quote, "The manual dexterity of the Oriental female is famous all over the world. Her hands are small and she works fast with extreme care. Who, therefore, could be better qualified by nature and inheritance to contribute to the efficiency of a bench assembly production line than the Oriental girl?" End quote. The personal officer of Intel Corporation, a U.S. semiconductor firm in Malaysia, said, quote, "We hire girls because they have less energy, are more disciplined, and are easier to control." End quote. The Third World Investment Bureau of Haiti, trying to attract German investors, published an advertisement showing a beautiful Haitian woman and the text, quote, "Now you get more labor for your DM. For only $1 she works happily for 8 hours for you, and many, many hundreds of her friends will do so too." End quote. The sexist undertones in such ads is quite obvious. One gets the impression that these governments, like pimps, offer their young women to foreign capital. As a matter of fact, prostitution is not only part of the tourist industry, but also of the planning of business enterprises in third world countries. It is impossible not to notice the prostitution context within which the new International Division of Labor takes place, but if we want to understand whether the new interest in third world women is based on a systemic strategy or not, it is useful to look more carefully at the various projects and programs devised mainly by international organizations, which are similarly put under the title Integrating Women into Development. Almost at the same time as this new International Division of Labor was being worked out and put into practice, the world was made aware of the necessity of integrating women into development. Already in 1970, Esther Bosserup had found out that women had not benefited from whatever development had taken place in third world countries. Her findings were corroborated by the many reports on the status of women prepared by governments for the UN World Conference on Women held in Mexico in 1975. It was found out that women's status had deteriorated in most third and even first world countries in all spheres, in politics, employment, education, health, law. As a consequence, the World Plan of Action presented by this conference demanded that the governments make substantial efforts to remedy the situation and to integrate women into development. After this, the UN organizations, the World Bank, the NGOs all began to talk of women and to include a chapter on women and development in their programs. Can we consider this as a genuine change of heart on the part of the male development planners? Were they now really interested in women's liberation after they had forgotten them throughout all the previous years? And what do they mean by integrating women into development? To begin with, let us not forget one thing. Women were also integrated into the old strategy of development. Their unpaid or low-paid labor as farm workers, as factory workers, as housewives had also been the base of which had been called modernization in developing countries. But this labor had remained invisible. It provided a lot of the subsistence basis on which male wage labor could emerge. It subsidized the male wage. But now something else was meant. Integrating women into development means, in most cases, getting women to work in some so-called income-generating activities. That is, to enter a market-oriented production. It does not mean that women should expand their subsistence production, that they should try to get more control over land and produce more of their own consumption, more food, more clothes, etc., for themselves. Income in this strategy means money income, and money income can be generated only if women produce something which can be sold on the market. As purchasing power among poor third world women is low, they have to produce something for people who have this purchasing power, and such people live in the cities in their own countries, or they live in the Western countries. This means that the strategy of integrating women's work into development also means to export or market oriented production. Poor third world women produce not what they need, but what others can buy. Another characteristic of the strategy is that it defines third world women not as workers, but as housewives. What they do is not defined as work, but as an activity. By universalizing the housewife ideology and the model of the nuclear family as signs of progress, it is also possible to define all the work women do, whether in the formal or informal sectors, as supplementary work. Her income as supplementary income to that of the so-called main breadwinner, the husband. The economic logic of this housewifeization is a tremendous reduction of labor costs. This is one of the reasons why international capital and its spokesmen are now interested in women. This strategy was first worked out, as we saw, in 19th and 20th century Europe and the USA. Housewifeization was a necessary complement to the creation of the free proletarian there. But whereas in Europe and the USA, many workers can afford to feed a non-working housewife due to the exploitation of the colonies, the vast masses of third world men will never be in a position to have a non-working housewife at home. Therefore, the income generating strategy for women is based on an image of women which has no empirical base among the majority of third world women. In the Caribbean, more than a third of all households are not headed by a male breadwinner. Recent research has shown that the number of households headed and economically supported by women is increasing, particularly in the rural areas of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The reasons given are a turn towards cash crop production for exports, the mechanization of agriculture, changes in land holding systems with increased landlessness of the poor. Men have either migrated to the cities in search of wage work or gone into more remunerative, remunerative areas like cash crop production, leaving their women and families behind. It is well known by now that men who have migrated to the cities or to other countries not only are away sometimes for 20 years, but that they often or totally give up their responsibility as provider for the family. Particularly in Africa, the rural women left behind by the out-migrating men have become, quote, the major, if not the sole supporter of rural households. In Mali, Ghana, Brazil, Togo, Liberia, Nigeria, Swaziland, and parts of Uganda, inability to rely on the husband's earnings leads these women to undertake cash cropping or trade in order to pay land taxes and agricultural labor costs, end quote. Quote, Yoruba women complain that the remittance they receive are insufficient. In Lesotho, only 50% of all women heads of household had access to remittances, end quote. These findings show that women in third world countries, particularly in rural areas affected by modernization processes, are increasingly becoming de facto breadwinners and heads of household. But this reality has not changed their being defined, both legally and in common ideology, as dependent housewives and their husbands as breadwinners and heads of household. On the contrary, the more the material base for the emergence of the classical capitalist couple, the free wage earner or free owner of means of production and his dependent housewife, is undermined in third world countries. The more this factual reality is mystified by the propagating and universalizing this model. It is, indeed, the structural and ideological core around which development programs and plans are constructed. The capitalist sexual division of labor, epitomized in this famous couple, is the strategic principle which is responsible for the fact that women in the various income-generating activities, where they produce commodities for the market, are not defined and paid as wage workers. That, on the other hand, in land reform provisions, they are not given independent and legal ownership of land, that they do not get access to other productive property, that in cooperatives they are often mere appendices to the male members and cannot become independent members of a cooperative themselves. This mystification that women are basically housewives is not an accidental side effect of the new international division of labor, but a necessary precondition for its smooth functioning. It makes a large part of labor that is exploited and superexploited for the world market invisible. It justifies low wages, prevents women from organizing, keeps them atomized, gears their attention to a sexist and patriarchal image of women, namely the real housewife supported by a man, which is not only not realizable for the majority of women, but also destructive from a point of view of women's liberation. The smaller the chance that most women in third world can become real housewives, the greater the ideological offensive today, propagated and spread by all media to universalize this image of as that of modern progressive women, of good women. Hold on, let me just get a sip. All right, women as breeders and consumers. Actually, let me just pause right there. I'm just going to go check out something real quick. Sorry about that. I had to grab more Kleenex. All right. Women as breeders and consumers. The bad women. This strategy of mobilizing poor, cheap, docile, dexterous, submissive third world women for export orientated production is only one side of the global division of labor. As we said before, it is not enough that these commodities are produced as cheaply as possible. They also have to be sold. In the marketing strategies of the Western and Japanese corporations, which are thriving on the export-orientated production in third world countries, Western women play a crucial role too, but this time not as producers, but as consumers, as housewives, mothers, and sex objects. As producers, women in Europe and the US were the first to be fired as a consequence of this new international division of labor. They lost their jobs in textile industries and electronic industries. When Philips in Eindhoven in Holland closed its factory there in order to reopen others in third world countries, thousands of women lost their jobs. They were sent home to their kitchens with the argument that they should show solidarity with third world women who needed jobs. Whereas in Holland, the husband's income was so high that a woman could stay home and use her time to look after her children better. At the same time, the same multinational corporations mobilize women constantly as buyers of their goods. The tremendous expansion of TV and the introduction of cable TV have, as their main purpose, the expansion of advertising. Most of the advertising is directed towards women as consumers, or the advertisements themselves contain images of women as sex symbols as their most important ingredient. Here we see the new international division of labor divides the world up into producers and consumers, but it also divides women internationally and class-wise into producers and consumers. This relationship is structured in such a way that third world women are objectively, not subjectively, linked to first world women through the commodities which the latter buy. This is not only a contradictory relationship, but also one in which the two actors on each side of the globe do not know anything of each other. The women in South and Southeast Asia hardly know what they produce for or for whom they make the things they make. On the other hand, the Western housewife is totally oblivious of the female labor, the working conditions, the wages, etc., under which the things which she buys are produced. She is only interested in getting these things as cheaply as possible. She, as most others in Western countries, attributes the overabundance in our supermarkets to the productivity of Western workers. We shall have to discuss the question whether this contradictory strategy, which divides women worldwide into workers and housewives, contributes to women's liberation. It is often argued that this strategy gives jobs to third world women and cheap consumer goods to Western women housewives. So both should be happy. But if we look more closely at the consequences of this strategy, we may come to another conclusion, namely, that the enslavement and exploitation of one set of women is the foundation of a qualitatively different type of enslavement of another set of women. One is the condition as well as the consequence of the other. The division between women as producers and women as mothers and consumers has yet another dimension which plays an important, if not the most important, part of the strategies of the new international division of labor. Whereas women in the rich, industrialized countries are increasingly thrown out of the formal sector, are increasingly reminded that the family, their reproductive work for husband and children, and consumption work is their natural destiny. Third world women, as consumers and procreators, are considered highly undesirable, even expendable. In fact, if one looks at the statements made by Western governments, particularly by the USA, the UN organizations, and also by non governmental organizations, which have appeared since the end of the 60s, one can see that third world women, as potential breeders and consumers, are seen as one of the gravest threats to the world as a whole. Bonnie Mass in 1976 points out that the UN Declaration on Population is continually cited out of context and is used to convey the notion that overpopulation is the world's greatest problem today. Thus, quoting the UN, a spokesman of the US State Department already wrote in 1969, quote, "This is the greatest challenge facing the UN and the world today. This conflict between a rapidly growing, underfed world giving way to despair and violence, and a possible world in which individuals live constructively in dignity and sufficiency, calls for the greatest effort and dedication of this era." End quote. As Bonnie Mass has shown, the neo-Malthusian strategy of putting the blame for poverty and hunger in the colonized countries on the poor themselves was systematically developed by the pillars of corporate capitalism and imperialism. First by the Rockefeller Foundation, the US State Department, and the US Agency for International Development. Then by the World Bank, which sold it to a large number of third world governments and practically to all Western governments. In 1968, the World Bank stated, quote, "All such activity of family planning arises out of the concern of the bank for the way in which the rapid growth of population has become a major obstacle to social and economic development in many of our member states. Family planning programs are less costly than conventional development projects, and the pattern of expenditure involved is normally very different. At the same time, we are conscious of the fact that successful programs of this kind will yield very high economic returns." End quote.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Am I getting this right? It's so disgusting. They're like gonna, fleece these people and then say, "Oh my God, we don't know why they're so poor. We better
Yeah.
figure it out. And meantime, they better stop having children."
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's so disgusting. I'm sorry.
I
I just
know,
wanted to
right?
say that. I just wanted to point
I
that
know,
out. It's
right?
so
When you
horrifying.
really, that's the thing when you actually listen to a lot of the state departments and a lot of these like conferences and you actually read what they say, it's disgusting.
Mm, yeah.
It's really
When you
disgusting.
get through the like legalese and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can put like out of context, and then they kind of like give you out of context sort of like messages. But when you really listen to what they say, usually they tell
Right.
on themselves a lot of the time. Yeah.
They just say the quiet part out loud, just like,
Yeah.
Francis Bacon.
Well, because they
Apparently
don't
there's a
expect
long
people to sit
tradition
at
of this
these.
shit.
They don't expect people to pay attention to the actual, like, say, the organization events that they put on where they speak in the forums. They don't expect people to go and actually listen to the whole thing themselves because it's
That,
up
and then they
there.
put it in this language that is not anything like as straightforward as what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. Of course they won't. But like when they talk to each other, you can
Excuse me.
yeah. Instead of just listening to the statements they give to the public, they really do tell on themselves.
Mm. Anyway.
Anyway, what was that? Oh, yes. Finally, the various UN organizations were successfully convinced that the population explosion was the number one problem in undeveloped countries, and that the family planning programs had to be added to their other activities. Even the International Labour Office began to introduce family planning into its policy for underdeveloped countries. From 1970 to 1979, the annual expenditure of the ILO, or International Labour Office, for population activities, financed by the United Nations Fund for Population Activities, rose from 60,217 US dollars to 4.5 million US dollars. ILO governing body statement, circa 1979. It is quite revealing that an organization which had restricted its focus to the productive sphere, where people appear as labor power, began to take an interest in the family and women as producers of labor powers, only when population control became a priority area, and not out of a concern for women as human beings. Although this whole policy was euphemistically camouflaged as family planning or even family welfare, it made women, right from the beginning, its main target group for research and policy measures. After the UN Conference on Population in Bucharest in 1974, and particularly after the UN World Conference on Women in Mexico in 1975, this focus on women and their status became quite explicit in a number of policy statements. In 1975, the World Bank concluded, quote, "The need to recognize and support the role of women in development is an issue which the World Bank considers of great importance for itself and its member governments. The Bank expects to participate to an increasing extent in the efforts of those governments to extend the benefits of development to all of their population, women as well as men, and thus ensure that so large a proportion of the world's human resources is not underutilized." End quote. The World Bank put pressure on governments asking for loans to take specific social and economic action to reduce fertility, and to raise the status of women socially, economically, and politically. Raising the status of women, however, when spelled out in concrete policy measures, amounts mainly to educating women in order to increase their productivity and to increasing their knowledge of contraceptives and their readiness to accept birth control measures. These two goals are not contradictory, though it may appear so, but are a part and parcel of the same strategy to integrate poor women's supposedly underutilized productivity into the global capital accumulation process. This strategy is interested in poor third world women only as producers, not as consumers and breeders. Through the provision of credits, their work is tied to the requirements of the world market, not to the satisfaction of their own needs. To repay these credits, which they obtained through various development programs, they are forced to sell the items they produce which might be necessary for their own consumption, or they are forced to produce items which are of no use value to themselves but are often luxury items for an international market. As none of the programs aimed at integrating women into development is interested in augmenting the consumption fund of the poor, but only in increasing the marketable output, reduction of the number of poor consumers becomes the necessary other side of the strategy. Whereas the subordination of poor women's productive work under capital accumulation is obscured by defining it as income generating activity, that is, by defining it as the supplementary work of housewives, their generative behavior is pushed into the limelight of the whole world. The rhetoric on integrating third world women into development means precisely this: obfuscating women's work as producers for capital by defining them as housewives and not as workers, and by emphasizing their behavior as breeders of unwanted consumers. Therefore, a comparison of the amounts spent on population research and population control measures in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and those spent on the promotion of income generating activities for third world women, would probably show that the former by far surpassed the latter. In fact, within the modernization strategy of the new International Division of Labor, third world women have become, as the Indian demographer Ashok Mitra writes, quote, "an expendable commodity as consumers and procreators. In the last 30 years after independence, Indian women have become No, women have increasingly become an expendable commodity, expendable both in the demographic and in the economic sense. Demographically, women is more and more reduced to her reproductive functions, and when these are fulfilled, she is expendable. Economically, she is relentlessly pushed out of the productive sphere and reduced to a unit of consumption, which therefore is undesired. End quote. What Mitra does not see, however, is the fact that being pushed out of the productive sphere does not mean that now women's work is not used productively for capital accumulation. It is precisely this pushing women out as workers and turning them into so-called small entrepreneurs and housewives in the so-called informal sector, which makes unrestricted exploitation and super exploitation possible. If, in the course of this process of super exploitation, they themselves and their children are destroyed, there is no great regret. For as breeders and consumers, these women are seen as a threat to the global system. And even with regard to this strategy of using their underutilized capacity productivity, one may no longer need as many as there are, particularly since high tech is making more and more human labor redundant. Is this too harsh a conclusion? If one looks at the strategies, tactics, and technology used in countries like India, Bangladesh, China, Singapore, under the guise of family planning, one cannot help but recognize a virtual trend towards gynocide. Not only have third world women, particularly in India and Bangladesh, unhesitatingly been used as guinea pigs by the multinational pharmaceutical industries to test dangerous contraceptives and methods like amniocentesis, but contraceptives like Depo-Provera, which were banned in the USA because of their carcinogenic qualities, have been massively dumped in many third world countries. The government in Bangladesh was forced not only to allow all kinds of scientific experiments to be carried out on its territory, but also to buy huge amounts of contraceptives from the Western pharmaceutical industry. In all this, some of the scientific lieutenants in the international war against population growth not only advocated compulsory measures, but also the open use and strengthening of patriarchal or sexist attitudes. Already in 1968, William McElroy, in a controversy with Kingsley Davis, who advocated compulsion, said, quote, in most societies, male babies are more desirable than females, and if the male were the first offspring, the motivation for having additional offspring would be reduced, end quote. In 1973, the biologist Prostgate goes a step further in deliberately advocating sex selection as a method of population control. Vimal Balasubramanian refers to the male utopia thus propagated by people like Postgate. Quote, Postgate argues that birth control does not work in the countries that need it the most, and alternative methods of population control such as war, disease, legalized infanticide, and euthanasia are rejected, as they are not selective, acceptable, quickly effective, or permanent enough. He suggests that breeding male is the only solution which meets all the above criteria. Countless millions of people would leap at the opportunity to breed male, particularly in the third world, and no compulsion or even propaganda would be needed to encourage its use, only evidence of success by example. End quote. Meanwhile, with the advance of sex pre-selection technology, amniocentesis, and the ultrasound scanner, the prospect of breeding male has become practice, not only in India, but with even more far-reaching consequences in China. In India, the practice of aborting female fetuses after sex determination by amniocentesis became a public issue only after it became known that some clever doctors in Amritsar had made a flourishing business out of Indian parents' preference for male offspring. They advertised to do both sex pre-selection and abortion of female fetuses. After the protests by many women's groups in India, the practice will, as Vimal Balasubramanian fears, simply continue in a more discreet way, particularly when ultrasound scanning becomes widely available. During a visit to India in summer of 1984, I learned that sex pre-selection and the abortion of female fetuses were already practiced by many low-caste and poor people in the countryside of Maharashtra. The case of China is even more horrifying, since here the whole mighty state and party apparatus is mobilized to implement the one-child policy, which constitutes part of the modernization strategy of China after Mao. Breeding male may not be a deliberate strategy of the Chinese government, but is, as Elizabeth Kroll and others have shown, The inevitable result of the contradictions between furthering small peasants' private land ownership, the continuation of patriarchal marriage and family patterns, and the one-child policy of state. Peasants who still largely have to depend on their children for old age security want sons, since the sons inherit the family plot and remain in the village. Daughters are married to some other family in village, as is the case in India. Daughters, therefore, are not wanted. The situation is aggravated by the policy of the government to reward those who follow the one-child norm. They get more private land if they are peasants, and they get more room, more school and health facilities, more modern equipment if they live in the cities. Thus, those who get most land have least family labor to work on it. This contradiction, combined with the compulsory measures of the government, the interplay of incentives and disincentives under the total control of the party, and growing neo-patriarchal attitudes and relations, put women under pressure from all sides, so much so that female feticide has risen to alarming dimensions. When the developments were first reported in the Western media, a cry of indignation could be heard from many corners. But often the people who now condemn China for its anti-women policy are the same who have for years subscribed to the argument that population growth was the cause of poverty in third world countries and had advocated stricter measures to bring the birth rate down. We still have to analyze in more depth later why a country, after a revolution which had adopted a socialist path of development, eventually ends up with this blatantly anti-woman policy. Suffice it to say here that the People's Republic of China, too, women are today obscured as workers and highlighted as breeders and consumers, and as such are unwanted. Now, the good women. Just give me a second, I need to get more Kleenex. Okay, so the good women. Let me just check something here. Yeah. The dialectics of obscuring and highlighting have yet another dimension which, so far, has been totally excluded from the discourse on women and development. This dimension is the role housewives play in the overdeveloped countries and classes. Here again, women are highlighted as mothers and consumers, and obscured as producers. But whereas this is considered highly undesirable in third world countries, all policies in the accumulating countries and classes see this as highly desirable for their women. First world women must, by all means, be made to breed more white children than they are doing at present, and they must be made, by all means, to buy more goods and commodities for their families, their children, the household, and for themselves as sex objects. The logic behind this contradictory valuation of their women and our women is the same which we have observed in the earlier phases of colonialism. Capital needs women in the colonies as cheapest producers. Therefore, they cannot be defined as free workers. But in order to market the commodities thus produced, it needs women in the metropoles as specialists in consumption, because without consumption or purchase of commodities, no realization of capital. To mobilize women to fulfill their duty as consumers has become one of the main strategies of capital in industrialized countries. Consumption work is therefore increasing tremendously in the rich countries, and is using more and more of the free time as of wage working and non-wage working women. As most of the people in the overdeveloped countries are tied to the market for the satisfaction of their basic needs, they are forced to do this consumption work if they want to survive. With a massive replacement of human labor by computers and robots, this consumption work will increase even further. Whereas some years ago, the housewife had to run through the supermarkets to select the commodities, compare prices, pay the bill at the cash counter, carry the commodities home, unpack everything, store everything, remove the packing, etc. She is now already forced also to put the commodities into a bag herself, weigh them, put the price into the computer, and put the price tag on her merchandise before she can pay at the counter. In such supermarkets, hardly any service personnel is left. All the work necessary is done by the consumers themselves, except for the person who has to collect the money from the customer at the checkout desk. But even this may become expendable when everyone is forced to buy credit cards or via home computer. As we noted earlier, international capital not only rediscovered women, mainly in the underdeveloped countries, to lower their production costs, it also rediscovers women in the centers of capitalism to lower the cost of producing an adequate demand for its commodities. Increasingly, the socialized services in health, education, information transfer, which in many countries were paid for by the welfare state, are again being privatized. This privatization. Oh, hold on. Someone's trying to call me. I don't know why. Okay. Where was I? But even this may become expendable when everyone is forced to buy credit cards or via the home computer. As we noted earlier, international capital not only rediscovered women, mainly in the underdeveloped countries. Oh, I already read that. Okay. This privatization means that women's work as housewives will increase tremendously in the future. As Jacques Attali has said, the production of the adequate consumer increasingly becomes the work of the consumers themselves. The new commodities require a particular type of consumer, and the new technologies, particularly microelectronics, are such that they, in fact, manipulate and produce this new consumer. The more this technology finds its way into private households, the tighter the grip of capital over the individual consumers, particularly women. In future, women who have been pushed out of the productive sphere in factories and offices will find themselves in front of a home computer where they will be engaged in electronic homeworking, along the traditional lines of the putting out system, for the same firms or others which have pushed them out. Thus, more and more free wage labor is being transformed into non-free housewifized labor, and the free consumer is increasingly forced into a coercive structure which makes him or her not only buy the commodities, but also do more consumption work than before if he wants to survive. The housewife is the optimal labor force for capital at this juncture and not the free proletarian, both in the underdeveloped and overdeveloped countries. Whereas the consumer housewife in the West has to do more and more unpaid work in order to lower the cost for the realization of capital, the producer housewife in the colonies has to do more and more unpaid work in order to lower the production costs. Both categories of women are increasingly subjected not only to a manipulative ideology of what a modern, that is, good woman should be, but even more to direct measures of coercion, as was already clearly visible in the Third World as far as birth control is concerned. The new strategy of obscuring women's productive work for capital is propagated under the slogan of flexibilization of labor. Not only are women pushed out of the formal sector, as happened some time ago in Indian women, they are reintegrated into capital development in a whole range of informal, non-organized, non-protected production relations, ranging from part-time work through contract work to home working to unpaid neighborhood work. Increasingly, the dual model according to which third world labor has been segmented is reintroduced into the industrialized countries. Thus, we can say that the way in which third world women are at present integrated into capitalist development is the model also for the reorganization of labor in the centers of capitalism. Ideologically, however, increasingly open racist arguments are used to camouflage the de facto structured similarity between the two sets of women. Whereas the Western consumer housewives are encouraged to consume more and to breed more whites, the colonial producer housewives are encouraged to produce more and cheaper and to stop breeding more blacks. The new wave of racism which we encounter today in the West has its deepest roots in this contradiction, and in the growing fear of an increasing number of marginalized people in the rich countries that they might all become as expendable as the women in the third world countries. All right, and now Moving on to linkages, some examples. Let me just see. Oh. We still got quite a bit to go, actually. It's a long chapter. Okay. The general pattern of the interplay of the sexual division of labor with the new International Division of Labor may be clear. What is less clear, however, are the de facto linkages which exist between consumer housewives and producer housewives. This lack of clarity is due to the mystification created by commodity production and the division between consumption and production. Once the commodity reaches its consumer, the latter is no longer able to know what production relations have been incorporated in the commodity. In the following, therefore, a few examples of the de facto linkages which exist between first world and third world women are analyzed. I restrict myself at present to this relationship, although we should not forget that a similar relationship prevails between women of different classes within third world and first world countries. Of the many possible examples, I choose only some where these linkages are less blurred than is the case in most others. A. Women in agricultural and dairy. B. Women in handicrafts production. C. Women in the electronics industry. And D. Women in prostitution tourism. One could add a number of examples like women producing flowers in Colombia, or the garment industry in South Asia, in India and Sri Lanka, or women in food and fish production. But the relationship and structures will be more or less the same. I base this discussion on the findings of several empirical studies carried out in recent years. A. Women in agriculture. When feminists began to discover and analyze the function of housework for capital accumulation, some of us as early as 1978 pointed to the structural similarity between the production relations of the Western housewife and those of the poor peasant producer in Asia, Africa, or Latin America. The production relations of both are usually considered to be outside capitalism proper. They are sometimes characterized as pre-capitalist, semi-Z, etc., by orthodox Marxists. A closer analysis, however, revealed that these subsistent producers, as we called them, still constitute the hidden non-wage base for extended reproduction of capital. Initially, however, we thought, following Carmen Diana Dier's analysis in 1978, that subsistence peasant producers only subsidize the wage of the men who have migrated to the cities or to the industrial centers of the West. With the small peasant strategy of the World Bank, it became clear, however, that this dimension, namely lowering the wage costs of the real proletarians, constitutes only one of the various production relations by which poor peasants in general, and peasant women in particular, are integrated into the process of capital accumulation. In the following, I shall describe two examples of how this integration of women in agriculture may take place. One is about typical women agricultural laborers and marginal peasants in India. The other is about women in a model cooperative in Venezuela, which produces sugarcane for agribusiness. The study on women agricultural laborers and marginal peasants took place in Nalgonda district in the state of Andhra Pradesh in South India. Its aim was to find out how farm market-oriented production had affected the work and living conditions of typical agricultural laborer women, who do most of the work in the rice-producing areas of South India. The fieldwork carried out by Lalitha Krishna Kumari and myself took place in these three villages and covered the whole range of women's work, their work in and around their huts, cleaning, food processing and preparation, water and fuel collection, tending the buffaloes, etc., as well as in the fields, which included rice transplantation, weeding and harvesting, transplantation, weeding, and processing of cash crops like tobacco, chilies, oilseeds, etc. Although the form of this work, as well as the overt relations, had not undergone any dramatic change, the women were still mainly hired as casual laborers or coolies by land-owning middle and rich farmers, who from time immemorial had cultivated their land with the help of coolies, usually people from the untouchable communities. The actual essence of these production relations had undergone significant changes. The relationship between the landlords and the coolie caste was no longer the traditional one in which the coolies had a right to do certain jobs. For example, removing dead bodies, watering the fields, making shoes, women doing all transplantation and weeding work in the fields, etc., and were entitled to get a fixed amount of remuneration, usually in a kind. Now the landlords no longer felt responsible for these people. Due to the constant indebtedness of the poor, they were able to keep many of the men of these communities as bonded laborers. The women, however, were still hired as casual labor during the agricultural season, but they were neither treated in the traditional manner as coolies with a right to do certain jobs, nor as free wage laborers who had contractual rights to sell their labor freely, as real proletarians do. They were de facto treated as dependent housewives whose work was considered supplementary to that of the breadwinner. In reality, however, these women did not only do all housework, they also did most of the work in agriculture. About 80% of the agricultural operations were performed by them. They constituted the bulk of the rural workforce. Moreover, in many cases, they were the real breadwinners of their families because the men were either jobless or had migrated to the city and did not send money back. In recent years, much has been written in India on the trend of pushing women out of productive work or gainful employment. Most of these studies are based on census data and other statistical sources which all defined housework as non-work. As all women also do housework, apart from the other work they may do, a lot of their other work disappears from the statistics and therefore from public perception. Our findings, however, suggest that rural women in India do not work less than before, but rather work more. In fact, men seem to do less, but they do the better paid, more prestigious modern jobs, for example, on the new machines. Modernization and capitalist development have only deprived women workers of their traditional rights without giving them the new rights of a proletarian. But since they are forced to produce their own survival and that of their children, they mostly have to accept wages which are below the minimum wage and do to all kinds of work in order to make a living. Thus, women were not only getting poorer in absolute terms, they were also getting poorer in relative terms, namely in comparison to the men. Since part of the agricultural production process, even in this poor area, was geared towards cash crop and market production and had undergone a certain degree of modernization, the women of the traditional coolie classes were marginalized and pauperized. Due to the introduction of electric pumps and other machinery, their men had lost work. Many had left the villages, and others were just idle, and often the women had to make ends meet for the families. Moreover, as the traditional artisan castes in the villages had also largely lost their occupations due to the introduction of factory made goods, the women also joined the mass of agricultural laborers, competing with the traditional coolie women for the scarce jobs and thus lowering their wages. In this situation of growing poverty, programs for small farmer development were introduced and also extended by the help of a voluntary organization to the poor women. They included, among other objectives, income generating activities based on small bank loans for getting a buffalo, some goats, starting a small shop, etc. The buffalo scheme was the most important item in the package. If it not only involved the largest loan amount, but was also more directly integrated into the capitalist market mechanism and was thus, therefore, under total control and supervision. The buffalo scheme in these villages was part of the dairy development scheme called Operation Flood, through which milk production in India was stepped up in recent years. This program was also extended to small and even marginal farmers. The beneficiaries got a bank loan for the purchase of a high-bred buffalo. They were at the time made members of the Dairy Cooperative Society. They were supposed to deliver all milk to the milk center, which transported it to the dairy in the city. The repayment of the loan was secured in such a way that the bank would deduct 50% from the milk money directly from the milk center. Thus, the actual producers did not get direct control over the milk money till the loan was repaid. Most of the work in the maintenance of the buffalo was women's work. Women had to collect the grass for the animal and carry it home. They had to feed clean milk the buffalo, but the milk money was collected by the men. For marginal peasants and landless laborers, to feed a buffalo meant that women had to walk for miles to find grass and fodder at the edges of the fields or on uncultivated land. Formerly, this had been the common property of all. The landowners had always allowed their coolies to collect fodder on their fields. After the introduction of the dairy scheme, however, the landlords claimed all grass growing on or around their fields as their private property, which they either wanted for their own cattle or wanted to sell as commodity. The poor women who continued to collect grass in the traditional way were accused of stealing the grass and were often beaten and harassed by the landowners. The following account of one woman may illustrate what the integration of poor women into this type of commodity production means. Abama had got a buffalo 2 years previously. For 2 months, she gave 5 liters of milk. For 2 months, 4 liters. and for 2 months, only 2 liters. Then she stopped giving milk because she had conceived. The calf died. For almost a year, she gave no milk. Her husband took the milk to the milk center and collected the milk money. They got 1.5 rupees on average per liter, according to the fat content. In all, they had got 990 rupees as milk money. Of this, 50% was deducted for the repayment of the loan. Thus, they received 445 rupees. Abama had bought feed mix for 76 rupees to feed the buffalo during the lactation period. After she delivered, she stopped giving her the feed mix because she could not afford to pay for it. Since they had hardly any land of their own, they had to take a loan for grass. She repaid 150 rupees of that loan. Since her husband was working as a porter in the nearby market town, and she had to go for coolie work, they had to employ someone to take the buffalo grazing. The main problem was the maintenance of the buffalo during the summer months, March, April, May, June, when everything is dry and parched. During these months, the buffaloes don't give milk, but they have to be fed. Poor people like Abama, however, have no money to buy fodder for the animal when they don't get milk. So they either neglect the animal during these months or they have to borrow more money to keep it alive until the monsoon starts. The local breed of buffaloes is used to living on little fodder during these months without falling ill. But the expensive hybrid type, which the poor peasants had to buy, often do not survive these months. Abama could not take another loan to feed her buffalo during the summer months. What has Abama gained through her extra work with the buffalo, which was supposed to supplement her meager income from wage labor? The buffalo gave milk for 6 months in 2 years. After deduction of 50% for the repayment of the loan, Abama was left with 445 rupees. Out of this amount, she had to pay 76 rupees for feed mix and 150 rupees for the repayment of the loan for grass. The boy who took the buffalo for grazing had also to be paid, but she did not say what she gave him. At an estimate, he got 40 rupees. Hence, the net income from the dairy scheme for Abama was 445 rupees minus 266 rupees equals 179 rupees. In the course of 2 years, Abama had earned 179 rupees. The milk she had produced during these 2 years, however, was sold in the city for 2.5 rupees per liter. This amounts to 2,475 rupees for 990 liters. If we now compare this income with the labor time spent on the maintenance of the buffalo and the milk production, we shall be able to see how this scheme, which is supposed to help the poor, compares with the exploitation of the women as agricultural laborers. The profits made by the sale of the milk in the city are not distributed to the actual producers, but are appropriated in this case mainly by the state-owned Andhra Pradesh Dairy Corporation and by the various private firms selling milk products in the city. As an agricultural laborer, she received 2.5 rupees per day. As she worked 8 hours per day, this amounts to 0.31 rupees per hour. The exploitation of Abama as a commodity producer is hence more than double that of her as a wage laborer. In a more recent and broad-based study on the effects of the operational flood on poor marginal peasant women in Andhra Pradesh, Manhoshi Mitra corroborates these findings. She found that introduction of dairying among landless and poor peasants has increased women's workload without giving them adequate access to the fruits of their labor or to new avenues of participation and management of dairy cooperatives. Not only were all paid jobs in the cooperatives occupied by men, but men also controlled the income from dairying. Moreover, women from landless and poor peasant families producing milk hardly consumed any milk themselves. The little milk these women kept for their families was consumed by the men or the male children. Girl children hardly got any. She also found that with the new cash income from milk, many men who usually controlled this income had stopped going for agricultural work and hung around on the pretext of looking after the animals. These findings corroborate Veronica Benholt Thompson's thesis about the profitability of the investment in the poor. The controlled capital gets over housewifized producers through the extension of credit and about the actual trickling up effect which takes place due to such development programs ostensibly meant to help poor women. They also show clearly that these programs enhance the inequality between men and women doing more work and getting a smaller share of the pudding. Thus, they aggregate the polarization between the sexes. Sorry, it is I have no smoke, so hold on. The other side. The analysis of this process of draining poor and landless peasant women in India of their work and their milk, a process called Operation Flood. In the Orwellian Newspeak tradition, flooded are the cities, drained are the villages and the women, would be incomplete without at least a brief analysis of the connections between the superexploitation of poor women in India, integrated into capitalist milk production, and the overproduction of milk in the European common market. What has a British or Dutch or German or French housewife who can choose from hundreds of varieties of cheese, yogurt, milk products, cream, etc., to do with women like Obama? The ordinary Western consumer housewife hardly knows that before Operation Flood, the milk which was produced in the villages in India was also consumed by the villages. Now it is exported to the cities. She will also not know what Obama's exploitation has to do with the milk sea and the butter mountains of the European common market. And yet, this is why Operation Flood was started. When the European Economic Commission was looking around in 1968 for a place to dump their surplus milk and butter oil, they discovered India. Initially, they offered their surplus to India dairying organizations as gifts. These should reconstitute skimmed milk powder into milk and milk products to sell to the urban markets, and thus earn the capital necessary to invest in the modernization of the dairy industry in India. The Indian government then approached the Food and Agriculture Organization to obtain butter oil and milk powder donations from the EEC. With an initial investment of 954 million rupees. Operation Flood was the largest dairy development program ever launched in the world. It promised to create a white revolution by copying the model of the Kara District Cooperative Milk Producers Union Ltd. At Anand and Gujarat, and to flood the cities with rurally produced milk. It was hoped this flooding would be achieved, among others, through the extension of dairies, the installation of rural milk collection and chilling centers, the development of improved milk animals, and the organization of milk producers in cooperatives. The cities would get more milk and the milk producers more income. It was hoped that in this way the poor would also eventually get more milk. That this expectation was not fulfilled is now admitted by many. The four big cities, Bombay, Delhi, Madras, and Calcutta, do, however, get more milk. But since the majority of poor urban people cannot afford to buy milk at the price of $2 or 2 rupees, the dairies convert milk into their other luxury items like ice cream, sweets, or baby food. Thus, it is mainly the middle-class housewives who benefit from the Operation Flood and who have access to expensive milk products, not the rural or urban poor. In Europe, however, the Indian Operation Flood, as recipient of surplus milk, has played an important role in maintaining the continuous overproduction of milk based on the import of cattle feed from the third world countries and the USA and on state-subsidized prices. European dairy farmers, European food multinationals, and European governments all had a vital interest in keeping the Operation Flood going and growing, since it helped them solve the problems of the overproduction of milk, which otherwise might have led to political unrest. At the same time, the overabundance of milk has led to a tremendous proliferation of industrially produced milk products, which all compete for the attention of the European housewife. The multinational food concerns who control the market constantly mobilize the European housewife through TV and other advertisements to buy more milk products. They have a vital interest in further propagating the image of the housewife as mother, consumer, and sex object. The integration of poor and landless peasant women into the Operation Flood has created an objective link between the poor women as producers who cannot afford to consume milk and middle-class housewives in the Indian cities and in Europe who are supposed to buy ever more and more sophisticated milk products. Unrecognized between the two sects of women are the big multinational food and cattle feed concerns, the governments, and a whole host of firms would profit from this arrangement. Okay, and then women working for agribusiness. The housewife model is not only the strategic importance in the informal sector of the rural areas, but also in the most modern sectors in agribusiness. Claudia van Werlhof has shown that in Venezuela, women's labor is not only exploited in the form of the unpaid family labor of the small peasants, but also in the big modern sugarcane cooperatives, which were established by the state after land reform and which, on contract and credit basis, produce directly for agribusiness. In the model cooperative of Camarapa in the province of Iroquois, men could only become members of the cooperative if they had a family. That means if they could substitute their own labor with that of their wives and children. Um, sorry, I lost my. Oh, there. If they were ill, if their wife or their son had to work in their seed, but women could not become members of the cooperative. They could enter the cooperative only through marriage. That means they were defined as housewives attached to a male family head. A woman, therefore, had to be ready and able to do all the work her husband had to do, but without his rights, and even without any right to monetary income. Therefore, women's economic position was worse in the most modern type of cooperative. According to Claudia von Werhoff, women were defined as housewives in this cooperative because they were thus made an ever ready and available labor reserve, which did not even need to be paid at all. This model, promoted by the state, ensured that not only could the men in the cooperative use their women's productive labor for their own benefit, but also the cooperative as a whole, and finally the agro industry for which the cooperative worked. Apart from this invisible integration of women's work into the production of commercial crops, however, these women were also mobilized as housewives proper with the help of rural social workers and through the promotion of housewives credits to change their food habits and to learn new skills, for example, to make dolls, in order to use their so-called leisure time productively, enter commodity production directly, and supplement the breadwinner's income. Thus, these women's labor was totally subsumed under commodity production and capital accumulation, but it still appeared to be as the subsistence production of housewives. Claudia van Werhoff concludes, quote, to be a housewife does not mean not to be a commodity producer, but rather to figure as a subsistence producer in spite of being a commodity producer, end quote. It is this mystification which makes the housewife model so profitable for capital. The model cooperative Kumarika produced sugarcane for agribusiness on a contract basis. It is not known how and in which forms this sugar eventually entered the world market, nor what were the end products which may have reached the consumers in the rich countries or cities of the third world. I am not, therefore, in a position to trace the direct links that may exist between housewives in the USA or Europe and the unpaid housewife producers in Venezuela. This difficulty in tracing the path of the product from the primary producer to the final consumer is typical for many of the products which enter the world market via agribusiness. Whereas in the case of exotic fruits and vegetables, it may still be easy. The picture becomes totally blurred in the case of cash crops like manioc, tapioca, palm oil, sugar, groundnuts, etc., which are used as raw material for the production of either animal feed or food items. We can only state in general terms that the fact that women's unpaid labor is tapped for the production of these commodities has to be seen as one of the reasons why there is an overabundance of commodities in Western markets. Thus, unpaid housewifized labor in third world countries is not only tapped for the production of commodities which can directly be consumed by housewives in the rich countries, but also for the production of commodities which may be used as raw material for a variety of other production processes, including the production of arms. The transformation of sugar into alcohol as a substitute for petrol may serve as an illustration. And we get to B, women in handicrafts production, lace and coir mats. The production of handicrafts has long been propagated as a strategy for poor rural and urban women in third world countries to supplement their meager incomes. This strategy is based on home or cottage industries. Women do this work in their so-called leisure time at home. They consider themselves as housewives and not as workers. The work is usually organized through the putting out system. The women get piecework rates, which are far below the minimum wage of agricultural laborers. And other studies on the lace makers of Narsapar, who were already engaged in this industry in the 19th century, the daily wage rate was about 0.58 rupees for 8 hours of work. More than 100,000 women were engaged in this industry, but they were nowhere found in the statistics as workers. The work was defined as a leisure time activity of housewives. All the lace was exported to the USA, Europe, Australia, and South Africa. The women themselves had absolutely no use in their huts for the lace goods they made. They were not even aware that not even aware of the use that was made of these goods, as the division of labor was such that a single woman would not make a whole piece, but only a component or a flower, as they call it. This industry was introduced by missionaries in the 19th century. In the course of time, a number of big export houses have emerged in the area and have made millions of rupees from the exploitation of these women. The other side of the coin are the importers in the industrialized countries, today mostly supermarket chains which have included third world handicrafts in their selection of goods. In a supermarket in Cologne, I found handmade lace from Naraspar, side by side with handmade lace from China, both at a rather low price. This means that today women of the working class also can afford to give their homes a sophisticated bourgeois look by adding some handmade lace to their furniture, a luxury formerly not found in such homes. Thus, the working class women in our countries can afford a lifestyle formerly only possible for bourgeois women because poor women in India make these things for a wage below their own subsistence level. This relationship thrives on the definition of women as housewives at both ends of the globe. Hold on, my kid just texted again.
Okay, and I was going to say it is almost 2:30 or 11:30 your time. So
yeah, my mom's gonna go pick him up. So
your mom is okay.
Yeah, I already
Right
asked.
on. Right
And I
on.
went to
I
go
still
get
have
one of
to
my
leave
thermoses.
in about half an hour though. So
Yeah, we should be, if you got half an hour, we should be okay.
okay. Right on.
Okay, I'm just letting him know that she's coming. Okay. A similar case was studied by Carlo Rizuru in Sri Lanka, where women were encouraged to make the coir mats for export. Whereas lace making was introduced already in the 19th century, the skill of making attractive mats of coir was introduced by a Dutch development project for women. The organization of the work was similar to that of the Naraspur lace makers, but the Sri Lankan mat makers had set up a small workshop where they worked together. This could be seen as an this could be seen as an improvement with regard to the autonomization of the lace makers. On the other hand, the fierce competition which is bound to emerge among these autonomized producers was perhaps even more pronounced in Sri Lanka than in Naraspar. Carla Rasuru emphasizes in her study the difficulty in getting such women workers organized. Another difficulty she mentions is the fact that, in spite of all the well meant efforts supported by Dutch women to organize an alternative marketing system for the sale of these mats in Holland and in Europe, the end result was that the big marketing corporations began marketing these mats. With them, the small third world shops could not compete. The conclusion is that this project created a new commodity, again, another luxury item for Western homes, which was then integrated into the variety of goods pro-offered by the big supermarket chains. For the women producers, this project did bring more money income, but it also made them dependent on the whims and the fluctuations of the Western market. I would not be surprised if all the women in third world countries who have been mobilized in recent years to start some export-oriented handicraft production were severely affected by the economic crisis affecting the industrialized countries today. What will the core makers of Sri Lanka or the lace makers of India do when the women in Holland or Germany have no more money to buy core mats or simply stop buying because they are fed up with the core mats or lace? And then C, women in the electronics industry. Let's just take a peek here. Yeah, okay. Whereas the previous examples illustrate the effects of subsuming women's labor under capital through home industries. The women working in the free production zones in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, El Salvador, Mexico, the Philippines, etc., are working in real factories. It might be added here that the house industry and the putting out system are not only restricted to handicrafts or to third world countries. With the so-called third technological revolution, the same atomized work organization will be used for highly sophisticated production processes. Already, US firms are putting home computers out to American housewives who then do parts of the work for them in the same way as the Nasapar lace workers are making lace components. This technological revolution based on the microchip is, however, based on the work of over 1 million women working in the electronic industries in Southeast Asia. Whereas everybody today talks the effects of the microchip revolution on the Western labor market, the possibility of throwing millions out of work through automation and computerization. Hardly anybody mentions the nimble-fingered, dexterous, docile Asian women, as has been called, who have made this all possible. Rachel Grossman has studied the conditions under which these women work and the mechanisms by which they are manipulated. Asian women in the electronics industry are placed on a global assembly line that reaches from Silicon Valley in the USA to Southeast Asia. On this assembly line, the Asian women do the most monotonous, time-consuming, stress-producing, unhealthy jobs. They have to weld together under a microscope the hair-thin wires which hold the tiny chips together to make them an integrated circuit. These electronic components are the actual brains by which the new computers and automats are directed. The American and Japanese firms have worked out a subtle system of labor control which combines methods of direct compulsion with methods of psychological manipulation. It goes without saying that trade union activity is prohibited in these factories. In Malaysia, if women are found to belong to some trade union, they are fired. The firms employ only young women between ages 14 and 25. When they marry, they usually lose their jobs. Hence, the firms save maternity benefits and always have young, inexperienced women who get some quick on-the-job training. The women have to compete a certain quota of chips per day. A woman from a semiconductor plant in Penang, Malaysia, said that every woman worker had to complete 700 chips per day, that they were not allowed to speak during work, that they were not allowed to move away from the workplace, that there were no breaks. The supervisors constantly criticized the workers. 8 hours of work at the microscopes would lead to eye pains and nervousness. Every woman had a table by her side where she had to mark her daily quota of the work. The women in the individual plants are constantly set against each other in productivity competitions to increase their quota. A woman who cannot meet the daily target is fired or has to work overtime. The woman quoted earlier said, quote, "They treat us like garbage," end quote. At the same time, the firms manipulate women in a very obnoxious way as sex symbols. At the weekends, they not only organize cosmetics bazaars, where the women are encouraged to spend their hard-earned money on lipsticks, makeup, creams, etc., to emulate the glamorous women of the West projected by the media in films, but they also organize beauty contests in their firms, where the women compete with each other for the title of beauty queen of their company. After one such beauty contest, the company magazine published the following statement, quote, "Our last winner of the company beauty contest spent $40 on her evening gown, but she made so many slits to show her legs that she can't wear the dress anymore," end quote. The companies organize singing and sewing competitions, and the photos of the competition winners are published in their magazines. Thus, the workers are not only totally in the grip of the company in their work hours, but also during their leisure time. The company presents itself as a big family with a white or Japanese male manager as their father figure who kisses the winner of the beauty contest. Here, patriarchal structures and attitudes are not simply used and strengthened, the submissiveness of the Asian female, not only used to lure Western or Japanese capitals to these countries. Whatever the traditional form of patriarchy may have been, the new patriarchy has clearly capitalist aims and objectives, as well as forms of expression. The Asian women in the free production zones are not seen as primarily as workers, but as women. In contrast to the women in the house industries, they are this time primarily defined as sex symbols. This shows how closely this whole mobilization of Asian women for production for the world market is linked to what I call the prostitution nexus. The other side. The other side of the international division of labor in this case means not only that millions of women and men in the West who are already losing and will increasingly lose their jobs in the mechanical and electronics industries, and even more so in the tertiary sector due to the introduction of computers, automats, text composers, etc., but also that women will be mobilized as housewives, consumers, and sex symbols in the marketing strategy for the sale of all these things. It is one of the hopes of the economic and political planners today that the crisis in the economy will again be mastered and a new accumulation cycle started by these new technologies, which it is hoped will be bought by every single household in the West in coming years. It is expected that every second household will have a home computer by 1990, that housewives will have computerized ovens, do their shopping via a computer, send their letters by telex, etc. One of the biggest expectations is with regard to the video industry. It is expected that video films and gadgets will replace the old TV to a large extent, so that, as was recently said, every husband is the program director for his family. What does this mean for women in the West? In West Germany, a recent TV discussion on the new video wave revealed that 40% of all video films are horror and war films. 30% are so-called action films, in which cars smash other cars, etc. 12% are pornographic films, and the rest is on education, culture, etc. If one adds the horror films to the pornographic films, because women, and increasingly black women, are the victims of sexist and sadistic violence of both types, one can imagine the extent of violence against women, which is already and will increasingly be the result of this integration of women into capitalist development. Violence against women itself becomes a new commodity. At this stage, it must also become clear to women in the West that this kind of development, this kind of technological progress, this kind of promised wealth is not and can never be in the interest of women. For women are being used here in the most cynical and sadistic way to create new needs for the already frustrated men in our societies, and in order to keep the already saturated market going. D. Sex tourism and the international of pimps. The most blatant manifestation of the combination of the new international division of labor with the neo-patriarchal or sexist division of labor is sex tourism. Tourism to third world countries, particularly in Asia, became a growth industry in the 1970s and continues to be propagated as a development strategy by international aid agencies. In fact, this industry was first planned and supported by the World Bank, the IMF, and US aid. Between 1960 and 1979, tourist arrivals in Southeast Asia increased 25-fold, and the countries of the region which had opened their gates to tourists, mainly from the West and Japan, took in over 4 billion tourist dollars in 1979. In Southeast Asia, statistic from Southeast Asia Chronicle. But not only Hong Kong, Thailand, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Singapore have made tourism one of their main areas of export production, but many other third world countries have followed. For example, Kenya, Tunisia, Mexico, countries in the Caribbean, Sri Lanka, Peru, etc. The main export product, which perhaps more than beaches, has attracted streams of male tourists from Japan, the USA, and Europe, are Asian, African, and Latin American women. Particularly the Thai and Filipino governments are offering their women as part of the tourism package. Thus, the Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand urged the provincial governors in October 1980 to contribute to the national tourism effort by developing scenic spots in their provinces while encouraging certain entertainment activities, which some of you may find disgusting and embarrassing because they are related to sexual pleasures. According to Pasuk Fungapachtit, I pronounced that wrong, but that's okay. About 200,000 to 300,000 women are working in the sex industry in Bangkok, camouflaged as massage parlors, tea shops, and hotels. Officially, prostitution has been prohibited in Thailand since 1960. According to another estimate, about 10% of Bangkok's women are working in this industry. In Manila, the number of prostitutes is said to be 100,000. Prostitution is also legally prohibited in Kenya, but the government is keen to attract Western tourists and closes its eyes to what is happening on the famous beaches. Rare protests, like that of a member of parliament who accused the Germans and the Swiss, in particular, of having made the coastal provinces their neo-colonial sex province, have not led to any consequences regarding tourism. Too much money is involved, of which the governing elite also gets its share. The close collusion between the tourist industry and the sex industry and the government is even more blatant in the Philippines, where the relatives and business partners of President Marcos and his wife Imelda are among the main beneficiaries of the tourist bonanza. As is well known, Southeast Asian women were first turned into prostitutes on a mass scale in the context of the Vietnam War and the establishment of American air and Navy bases in the Pacific region. The three countries which at present form the centers of Southeast Asian sex tourism, Thailand, the Philippines, and South Korea, have experienced a massive presence of American soldiers from the middle of the 1960s onwards. Not only these women were made prostitutes for the U.S. Army, the American military bases in Thailand were surrounded by bars, brothels, nightclubs, and massage parlors, where thousands of women worked in the rest and recreation industry for American soldiers. Most of the American military establishments were in northern Thailand, and many girls were recruited from the small peasants of the region. When the American troops withdrew in 1976, most of these women went to Bangkok and continued to work in the sauna service sector, but now for European, Japanese, and American tourists. A similar development took place in the Philippines, where the American Subic Bay Naval Base in Olongapo and the Clark Air Force Base in Angeles gave rise to a quick expansion of the R&R industry to such an extent that the economy of these towns experienced tremendous boom between 1964 and 1973. The end of the Vietnam War meant a certain slowing down of growth in the R&R industry, but the military base of Subic Bay also became a growth area for industrial development proper. The National Economic Development Authority invited foreign capital to invest in this area. The Japanese firm Kawasaki established a dockyard here. Thus, imperialist industrial capital follows the imperialist military. Both, however, strengthen the sex industry. Planners of the City Development Authority estimate that the R&R industry will remain the biggest industrial complex in the area, even after the U.S. Marines leave Subic Bay in about 20 years. The close links between capital and the military and the sexploitation of Asian women is also illustrated by the following personal account of a Peruvian engineer working for an American firm at a military construction site in Saudi Arabia. Due to security requirements, the workers were completely cordoned off from the surroundings. Every fortnight, they were flown to Bangkok, where the Thai women working in massage parlors and bars had to serve them sexually and emotionally. This man was enthusiastic about the Thai women who, according to him, were not simply prostitutes who sold sex for money, but gave men what they could hardly find any longer in the West, namely love. Yeah, okay. He did not ask why these women were selling love to men like himself or to male tourists from West Germany, Switzerland, the USA, or Japan. Most of them are daughters of poor peasants who got into debt or lost their land in the course of the modernization drive of the national planners. Many of the indebted fathers give their daughters, often still children, to some agent against a certain amount of money. These agents bring the girls to some establishment where they have to work as unwanted laborers for this agent or the owner till the loan has been repaid. Usually, they do not even know when this is the case. Most of the so-called masseuses of Bangkok send most of their money back to their families. The customers of the Southeast Asian, African, and increasingly also Latin American women who work in the growth industry are not only the businessmen and bureaucrats from Europe, the USA, and Japan, and the Asian elites. Many Western sex tourists are ordinary Western workers who consider it their right to spend their holidays and their hard currency on the sunny beaches of the third world countries and to buy themselves exotic women. Of the 2 million tourists who visited Thailand between 1970 and 1980, 71.1% were men. The Vietnamese woman who flew to Bangkok described the strange situation in the plane where she sat amongst German men, some workers, some business people, who spoke broken English with the Thai accent, which they must have picked up from the bars of Thailand. Another dimension of this industry is the marriage market of Asian or Latin American women established by private firms, mainly in West Germany. These firms openly advertise submissive, non-emancipated, docile Asian women in their prospectuses and even in the matrimonial columns of respectable newspapers. The German Karl-Heinz Kretschmann, who maintains the German Filipina Concert Club, advertises Filipinas not only sexy but also cheap. A housemaid costs, quote, a housemaid costs no more than 30 marks and her food per month. Why then buy an expensive washing machine? End quote. All marriage or partner institutes assured their male customers that with Asian women, the men can be sure of remaining the lord and master. He can keep his trousers on. One customer wrote, quote, after 2 broken marriages with German women, I am fed up with our German Emancipieren, which is a slang word for emancipated women, end quote. Apart from their submissiveness, the German men are attracted by the family orientation and non-demanding character of the Filipinas. One customer wrote, quote, many German men want a Filipina because the German women are more interested in their job and career than in the family. The Filipinas put the family above everything else, and they are not as hopelessly materialistic as the German women, end quote. An ordinary German man, even if he is jobless, can order one of these Asian women per catalog. If he is satisfied with her, he can keep her. If not, he can send her back or send her to the brothels in Frankfurt, Hamburg, or Berlin. In a village near Hamburg, an unemployed mason ordered 2 Asian women for DM 9,000. I don't know what that means. His investment has brought him rich dividends because he forced both of them into prostitution. In a small town in the Ruhara district, a bowling club ordered 1 Asian woman who was formerly married to one of the men, but had to serve all of them sexually. Many German men also arranged marriages in Thailand or the Philippines directly. The German ambassador in Bangkok stated that a large number of German men who had come to Bangkok as tourists had married Thai women. He declared that the only purpose of these marriages was to take these women to Germany and force them into prostitution. What is remarkable in this statement is the fact that the German embassy in Bangkok obviously does not create great problems for German men if they want to marry a Thai woman. According to a personal communication, Thai women married to German men get visas without any great difficulty. This is an absolute contrast to the rules and the practice followed when German women marry Asian or Turkish or African men who may have come to Germany in search for political asylum, who want jobs, or whom they may have met in their countries. In their case, it is usually first assumed that these are fake marriages. The couple has to undergo long investigations, and the man is often denied a residence permit or a visa because exotic men as workers are not wanted in Germany, but exotic women are obviously in great demand in the sex industry, which constitutes one of the growth sectors in the Western countries. Therefore, the West German state also applies a double standard with regard to the flesh meat trade from third world countries. The other side the other side of the story is the fact that the men in the rich industrialized countries, even at the time of an economic crisis, still have enough money at their disposal, particularly if they spend it in soft currency countries, to afford a holiday in third world countries and to buy themselves exotic women as a commodity. The fixation of Western men, particularly German men, on cars and their exotic sex holidays is so strong that the governments do all they can to supply these two most important mass consumer goods at a fairly low price. A government which deprived German workers of their cars and vacations would soon be toppled. Thus, in the international of pimps, governments not only in third world countries but also in the rich countries play an important role. The most important yet most invisible role in this export industry is, however, played by multinational tourist enterprises. The hotel chains, such as Hilton International, Holiday Inn, Intercontinental Hotel Corporation, Sheraton, Hyatt, etc., airlines, and a whole range of related industries and services. It is significant that hardly any hard figures are available about the profits these companies derive from sex tourism and the flesh trade. They preserve their appearance as decent and clean enterprises. However, it cannot be denied that they are not only close direct links between the different branches of the sector, for example, Intercontinental Hotel Corporation is a subsidiary of Pan Am, but also the most of the profits gained by sex tourism do not remain in the third world countries, but go to the countries where these multinational enterprises are located. With the new trends towards production of non-material commodities, because our markets are already overflowing with material goods, it can be expected that the flesh trade of third world women to industrialized countries will increase. What will also increase are the more open and sexist, racist, and sadistic tendencies in the market. Racism has always been part and parcel of this business from early colonialism up to the present. Increasingly, black or brown women are not only wanted because of their exotic sex appeal, but because they can be turned into objects of sadism and violence. The video industry thrives on violence against women, many of whom are women of color. The taboos against torture and violence against women were first broken with regard to colored women. Now, white women are also increasingly given free for the satisfaction of the apparently irresistible appetite of white men for sexual cruelty. In the international of pimps, made up of international and national capital, the local and Western governments, the military, and smaller men, one should not forget the role played by so-called avant-garde or alternative tourists, those who do not want to stay in big hotels but open up with their rucksack tourism new areas and new fields for sexploitation. Often it was these avant-garde tourists and alternative travel guides who dared to break local and Western taboos first, for example, by bathing naked on the beaches of Goa or by giving tips to tourists where they could find unpolluted virgin land for their hunger for sex and adventure. Whereas some years ago, the authors of alternative travel guides to Asia would still admonish their customers to show respect for the culture of the local people and treat the women as human beings, many of them are now offering tips, usually received from globetrotters, as to where to find the youngest and cheapest women in Asia. Their clients are the alternative tourists, mostly young and with little money, but they are often the ones who create new needs and fashions. Many women's organizations have begun to protest against the exploitation of third world women by Western and Japanese men. But with all the moral indignation some of them have expressed, particularly church organizations, they do not attack the root cause of this most blatant manifestation of the new International Division of Labor. In the documentation issued by Center for Development Oriented Education, an organization sponsored by the Protestant Church, a number of actions are proposed to fight against sex tourism, but third world tourism is a strategy of capital accumulation, is not exposed and criticized. Neither is the International Division of Labor rejected, which has integrated the racist, sexist, and sadistic exploitation of third world women into its development strategy, nor the capitalist sexual division of labor by which women are universally defined as dependent housewives and sex objects. It is precisely the objective interplay and manipulation of these two divisions of labor which constitute the basis of sexploitation. As long as women in the West and in third world countries are not only upset morally by the blatant and inhumane use of poor third world women by men from rich countries and classes without openly attacking the national and international capitalist growth model, they objectively subscribe to the justification advanced by the American pioneers of the R&R industry and Olocumbago military base in the Philippines. Instead of exposing our decent women to the possible danger of being raped or to other forms of sexual abuse, it is better to provide a safety valve for the sexual drive of the Marine and at the same time to make money. That's a quote from Wolazina in 1983. As long as the decency of the American or European or Japanese or Thai or Filipino middle class housewife is based on the abuse of poor women in Asia or in their own countries, as long as women worldwide do not reject the concept of decency, which has often been said implies prostitution, capital will be able to use this sexual and international division of women to make money. And I think we're at the conclusion. So, very close to being done. If we look at the new international division of labor from the point of view of women, of women's liberation, we can now say that it is always necessary to look at both sides of the coin to understand how women at both ends of the globe are divided and yet factually linked to each other by the world market and by international and national capital. In this division, the manipulation of women as invisible producers in the third world and as atomized, visible yet dependent consumers as housewives plays a crucial role. The whole strategy is based on a patriarchal, sexist, and racist ideology of women, which defines women basically as housewives and sex objects. Without this ideological manipulation combined with the structural division of women by class and colonialism, this strategy would not be profitable for capital. We can also observe that increasingly women as sex objects are used for the expansion of otherwise stagnating markets in the industrialized countries. In this tragedy, men play a decisive role as agents of capital. This role, however, has to be differentiated according to class, as well as to race and the location in the international division of labor. Not only do the big white men or Mr. Capital profit from the exploitation of their own women and of third world women, so also do the small white men, the workers. Not only do the big brown or big black profit or big or black men profit from the exploitation of their own women, but also the small black or brown men. And the big and small white women also share in the profit from the exploitation of both small brown and black men and women in the colonies. So do the big brown or black women in the colonies who aspire to the status of the real Western housewife as a symbol of progress and who have been discovered as promoters of third world capitalism. But in contrast to the men, the women, whether white or black, are increasingly made to pay openly with their human dignity and their life for the honor of being either prostitute or housewife. Thus, I think women in the rich countries have no objective interest in the maintenance of this integrated system of exploitation called the New International Order, in which poor third world women, poor peasant and marginalized urban women constitute the bottom because it is these women who are the image of the future. Also, for women in industrialized countries. This feature has already begun for many women in the USA and Europe who are integrated into development in the same manner and by the same methods which were applied to their third world sisters, namely to work invisibly in the new informal sector and to prostitute themselves in a variety of ways in order to make a living. And done. That was longer than I thought it would be.
Yay.
A lot of information.
Yeah, wow.
So necessary information, but yeah, so kind of understand how it is connected on a world scale, right?
Oh, it's terrifying.
I know. And some of this, like the predictions of like being automated, computerized, have already come to fruition too.
Yeah. It was very, I almost wanted to stop you at one point again. Just be like, yeah, exactly. Wow. She's psychic or something.
Yeah, I was trying to not rush, but yeah, be quick too. So I'm glad you didn't at that point because I wanted to make sure that we got through it because I think
That's why I didn't. Yeah, that's why I didn't. Because I have to go in a few minutes now anyway. Thank you so much for doing all that, though. I mean,
yeah, no worries.
Just to get it out there a little bit more, have a few people hopefully listen to this. My goodness.
Yeah, well, if you're going to start making videos now, they might, might drive more people to come in and listen to a chapter or two.
I can't promise to reference
doing them in chapters too, instead of just doing them in like sub chapters, because I think that way people aren't confused if they just watch one.
Yeah. I don't know that they would make sense by themselves.
Yeah, no.
It's not exactly short form material.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the next, I should probably talk about this. So I will be gone till the 12th of November. I'm coming back.
Okay.
So
what day of the week is that?
I don't know.
Let me just pull out my calendar. How of it? November 2025. Okay. So, I already have this written down. I have it written down gone through from the 1st through the 15th.
Okay. Was it the 15th? Maybe I'm wrong. Okay,
I just kind of drew an arrow.
Okay.
Like,
I think it's the 12th. I think it's the 12th. But
well, that's a Wednesday, so we're gonna miss that week anyway.
Yeah, so we'll miss out. So the next Wednesday after that, though, if we want to go back to it.
Okay. So let's see. This is the 22nd, so next week is the 29th. The 5th, you're gonna be gone. So that would have been our day. The 12th, you're gonna be gone. So we're actually gonna skip a whole month.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's so sad.
The next one is the 19th. So you want to talk about being confused? I mean, it's not like I'm going to forget any, where we were really, but
because we can always go back to and listen to some of it beforehand.
Yeah, true. I know. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because it really, she's describing the world that we were born into, basically.
Yeah.
Is what she's describing.
Yeah.
As 80s babies,
And that's the thing I wanted to talk about too. I don't know how much longer we'll have to do that, but the fact that
about 5 minutes
driven by commodity product, like there's not a flood of much commodities as much, because that's not what it's relied on now. Now it's hedge funds. Now it's like, trading stocks.
All right, I'm just gonna.
But you notice that it's because of that, it's starting to eat itself out. Things like production, like consumer goods and stuff are a lot worse in quality, but much higher in price, right?
Now they are. They were just cheap shit there for a while. Now they're more expensive too. Yeah,
and like shrinkage, like when things are now like all of a sudden getting smaller. Like
that's been going on for a long time too.
Yeah.
So, you said she wrote a sequel, is that right?
To this?
Yeah.
No, this Sylvia Fabrici did. I know that she's written. Let me just get it quickly. I'll go look at my thing. Hold on.
So the author of the last book we read wrote something that's effectively a sequel to what we're reading now.
So I got a book here, Ecofeminism by Maria Maiz and Vandana Shiva. So that's the other book I have by her.
Yeah.
I don't know when this was.
Okay, it's fine. We don't have to worry about what we're going to read next yet.
Yeah, we don't.
That's
but there is this. There's also the wild politics that could be next, or even that psychology and mental health industry in capitalism one that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, I don't know. I think wild politics.
There's also the gender brain. There's a bunch.
Yeah. I think we decided we were going to do a poll.
Yeah. Also, I just got in. When I haven't started but wanted to is what's it called? It's something to do with the CIA and the Manson family.
Oh God!
So that might be interesting.
That sounds like a guilty pleasure to me, but I'm weird.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah, because it makes me paranoid, and I try not to indulge in that kind of thing too much.
Well, I would make me more paranoid not knowing anything.
No, I feel like I already know that story.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of that.
I don't know the details necessarily, but like we've heard that's like.
I know there's a connection, but I just don't know what that connection. Like, the details basically.
Yeah,
But I am curious. What can I say? I'm curious.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna haunt my nightmares, but sure.
Right. It's so scary.
Oh God.
Also, excuse me. I know that there's books that I've read that really delve into COINTELPRO, and that might be something to be interested in too.
Oh
Because
no,
that
yeah,
way you can
definitely.
see how the
Oh
different
God.
sort of infiltrations,
The
like
thing that
movement,
kills me about that is it was all 50, 60, 70 years ago. And it's like, well,
but that never stopped. So
no,
to understand what's going on now, yeah.
I know. So I just get in this thought loop of I can't do anything about any of this. And they're still doing it. I can't do anything about any of these details. I can't act on any of these details, but I really wish I could, Oh,
Well, but you can't act the details in the past. What you can do is see the
right.
patterns that happened in the past and take that, put them in the present, and understand and sort of see them, what's happening now, and maybe what's behind some of the actions going on
Yeah.
mainstream or in different groups.
I
I
don't
think that's
disagree.
what makes it important, right?
No, yeah. It's important to get that information out there. I don't disagree. Me personally, like, I get it. You know what I'm saying? And like, I don't need to beat my head against it over and over again. It makes me feel like shit.
What do you do? Fucking shit.
I'm just I'm not a saint. I don't know. I'm not as strong and fortitude as you. I don't know.
I think that a lot of people just don't know about a lot of it. Well, I mean,
which is wrong, and I think I encourage you to do your part to, and if you want to educate people, and if you want to do it
I've
here,
already read
then
lots of details of that. I just don't know which of those books I have behind there, like the actual. I'd have to look. I'm
yeah.
just putting it out there. What we might be interested in. I don't care if you are or
Yeah.
not. It's cool. Like,
No, I'm
I'm
just
just putting
saying.
out there all what I've got here in my armory of knowledge.
And I wish I could just offer you the floor, unbiasedly, but I have to sit here
It's your channel. Like, there's so many options. You don't have to.
Yeah,
There's so many options
I
that
know.
that I'm good with any of them. So
Well,
yeah, I'll leave that to you.
Wow. I'm at the moment a little overwhelmed for options, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Next
Oh yeah,
month.
that
Oh my
techno-feudalism too.
gosh.
I want to pick that one up as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I forgot. You were interested in that one too, and I am interested in that one. Maybe that would be one. I don't know.
See that, and that's the kind of thing where it's more not that COINTELPRO isn't relevant. Okay. But
no, I know.
I feel
that
like
might be more relevant.
Yeah.
Because it's more specific specific.
Right. To what we're seeing now, and dealing with now. Yeah. And those people all love the simulation theory, I'm sure.
The techno-feudalists? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Scary. But when we do finally get back to this one, I'm just gonna quickly go over what the chapter's about.
Okay,
So
then I'm
chapter
gonna
5.
have to go.
Yeah, then go. Yeah, violence against women and the ongoing primitive accumulation of capital. We'll have the introduction. We go through the dowry murders. We go through amniocentesis and femicide, rape analysis, dowry as tribute. Are men rapists by nature? And conclusion. So we'll be getting again into more very specific cases and case studies.
Okay. That's obviously an interesting question. Everybody likes incendiary questions, right?
Yeah.
We'll just title the video that. Are men rapists by nature?
Yeah.
We'll get some views, right? Be like, hey, I'm not asking the questions. This is the book we're reading,
Oh, sorry, big plans. This is not a feminist des capital because it's just, but it is critiquing capitalism. It is obviously she does it through a feminist lens, critiquing capitalism as well as international division of labor when it comes to like third world and first world countries and their interconnected sort of economics, right, which keeps people
Right.
Like
So
locked in a very hierarchical, oppressive system. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of yes.
Well, I mean, not really. If you read Des Capital, a lot of it's more of the like literally just describing the structure of capitalism, whereas this goes into more case studies, right? It's not as much theory. It's theory plus case studies and working beyond Des Capital. So like using that as kind of as a basis a little bit, but then critiquing some of that basis, such as like primitive accumulation not ending, right? Whereas Karl Marx thought it would like end and like you'd be lifted out of that. Whereas she's in the position where it's for capitalism to exist, it's necessary to keep primitive accumulation going. And it's invisibilized as well as patriarchy is also invisibilized, and that's sort of necessary for the structure of capitalism's existence. So that makes sense to big plans, little drive.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm assuming that you've mentioned Des Capital, that you know what you've read Des Capital, which is nice. Because I seriously, most people that talk about Marxist theory has never read it. Which is so
I'm not gonna pretend that I have, which is why I asked. You know, that is that a fair assessment? Because I don't know.
Oh no. I'm talking about people that like make claims about what it is without reading a damn thing about it. Kind of a
thing. That's just annoying in general. Whenever anyone does that about anything,
it's annoying for everything when people do that. Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I would never, if I haven't read something, I wouldn't just make assumptions of it. Not mostly because I don't want to be an ass. I don't want to make myself looking like an ass, like I'm stupid. Like why would you? Just read it.
The Dunning-Kruger effect, maybe. I don't know why people do that.
Oh.
Listen, girl, I've got to let you go. I have to leave now.
Yeah, I gotta go too. I'm like dying coughing over here.
Okay. Have a fun vacation, and I will see you next month. Thanks. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everyone. Thanks for listening in. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.